Okay, good afternoon. Today is Tuesday, January 18th, and the time is 2:04 p.m. We are here for a briefing meeting to entertain interviews on two semifinalists for the superintendent search. The first one will be Randy Mallerween, and that will begin at 3:30 p.m. And then we'll have a break, and the final interview for today will be Christopher Bernier at 5:30 p.m. So it is 2 o'clock, and in the interest of being prepared for these interviews, does anyone have any comments or questions that they want to pose about this afternoon's activities? The reason that we are experiencing a time lag is because the interviews were supposed to be scheduled starting at 2, but that did not happen, and we could not change the official time of the meeting because of the advertisement requirements. So that being said, any questions or comments?
And I just wanted to share too, the reason that it was changed is because of the times that we are in and the COVID situations. So some of them were unable to because of other meetings that they were attending.
Okay, all right. So that leaves us with an hour and 20 minutes before we have to return to the table. So we can either recess now or discuss anything that might be on anyone's mind prior to the interviews. Okay.
I move that we recess.
Okay.
My second.
Okay. All in favor? So we'll recess and we will return here at 3:20 p.m. To be set up and ready to begin the first interview at 3:30. Good afternoon. Today is Tuesday, January 18th. The time is 3:25, and we are reconvening our briefing meeting for today. On the agenda is semifinalist candidate interview with Randy Mallerwine from 3:30 to 5:05 p.m. At this time, I'll ask Board Chair Debbie Jordan to introduce board members.
Good afternoon. Mr. Mallerwine, and if I say your name wrong, please correct us so we know how to say your name. So I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. So I apologize right off the bat. But welcome. My name is Debbie Jordan. I'm the chair who also represents District 4 in Lee County. Also, we are here with my colleagues, Ms. Mary Fisher, who represents District 1, Ms. Giovanelli, District 2, Ms. Patrica, District 3, Ms. Gittens had to step out. I have Ms. Vaughn, who is District 6, and Ms. Morgan, who is District 7. So welcome.
Thank you.
Ms. Fisher, shall I go over the timeline now?
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and go over with the timeline. First of all, we are really pleased to have you as one of our top candidates for the superintendency of the School District of Lee County. I also want to go over the timeline with you. You will have approximately an hour and a half for Q&A. And within that, we will have questions that the members will be asking. Each of those questions will be approximately 3 to 5 minutes. We will be timing that so that way we can get all the questions through to you. We also will start off with an opening statement from you, which you would have 3 to 5 minutes to do that as well. Following that, after all the questions have been completed, we will then give you another opportunity for your closing remarks. And then we'll turn that back over to Ms. Fisher for that to take place as the vice chair. And is there any questions that you may have at this moment?
No, I appreciate that. I don't have any questions at this moment. I think you guys did get my name correctly when it was said a few times, so I think we're good.
Okay, great, thank you. And as the members, when they do ask the questions, if they can, they'll reintroduce themselves, so that way you'll have the opportunity to see who's speaking with you. And thank you for being here.
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Fisher, we'll go ahead and begin with you then.
Well,
Opening statement?
Oh, I'm sorry. I already skipped your opening statement. Please, your opening statement.
Anyway, I'm humbled to be here. My name's Randy Mallerline. I've been a career educator. I'm in my 25th year. I'm really excited for the opportunity to speak with you guys today and answer questions and for you guys to get to know me a little bit. I have, my career's expanded over the last 2.5 decades. I've done a number of different things that qualified me to lead a school district. Recently, in the last few years, I've been, I'm getting some static. I don't know if you guys are, but I'm okay.
You sound really good. We hear
Okay,
you.
great. So the last few years, I've been an assistant superintendent in the largest school district in Arizona, Mesa Public Schools. We fluctuate between 59 and 62,000 students. My first 2 years there, I was the superintendent over 24 K through 12 schools, including three senior high schools and two high schools. I think a little bit of my skill set and a little bit of my strength leads to secondary. I have quite a bit there. I've been an assistant superintendent in other school district and secondary. So I was promoted to over secondary schools this year. So this year, my responsibility is for 30,000 students. I generally work with the team. I'm very team oriented. If I was going to look at my leadership style, it's about leading. It's about selection and then developing highly effective and highly functioning teams. So over the last year and coming out of the pandemic, I've been working with eight high schools, 6 comprehensive high schools, 2 alternative high schools, and kind of a online high school. So technically 9, but really 8, and then 11 junior high schools, 10 comprehensive junior high schools, and 1 AP IB focused high school. I do oversee 1 IB high school, and I work in all facets of leadership throughout the large organization. Another thing that I've done very recently that has really helped the district grow is I've established a very intimate relationship with Arizona State University. I'm our liaison that works very side by side, Dean Basile and Executive Director Menton. We are implementing some innovative public schools through the work that I was able to do. I was able to build. We qualified to go ahead and scale this work over what is 6 very large comprehensive high schools. The 6 comprehensive high schools that we're working are between 3,500, and my smallest high school that I get to lead is 2,300. But I have 4 of them that are in the top 10 in regards to size in the state. So I'm very, very much used to working with large schools in a large school district and understanding the communication skills that are needed to scale that work and motivate and innovate.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead. Thank you for your comments. And can you hear us okay?
I can. It seems like somebody is on a phone and that's like staticky through when I'm talking. I was just curious if it was coming through on your end because I wanted to make sure that my statements were clear.
Yeah, we were not hearing static, but some of it was not really loud. I guess
Can they turn up the volume?
we're going to see if they can turn up the volume so that way that when you do answer the questions that it's clear and everyone can hear them. But I just want to make sure that you're able to hear, because when I was trying to speak to you, I wasn't sure if you could hear, actually.
I can hear you. I can hear you very well. When I was speaking, it sounds like whoever's dialed in on a 239-337-8255 number, I can hear noise coming from that string keeps picking up.
What line is that?
I don't know, but is that,
What line is it? Okay, so is he hearing static from that? Because I want to make sure that we definitely have a clear understanding of what he's. Okay. Okay.
And is that distracting to the candidate to have that? I know how distracting it is when I'm on the phone and I can hear my voice.
Are you hearing that as
I'm
you're?
okay.
You're okay? Okay.
I can hear it. As long as you guys can hear me and I'm clear, I can handle a little bit of distraction.
Okay, we're going to see if they can turn that up, the volume up, so that everyone can hear what you are saying. And then if there is a time where you are having an issue, if you will please share that with us, because we want to make sure that you have every advantage that possible and to make sure that you are comfortable in the conversation as well. So
Thank you, I will.
Thank you. So in saying that, I am going to turn it over to Ms. Fisher.
Thank you. Again, I'm Mary Fisher, District 1 and the Vice Chair. And so I'll begin the questioning this afternoon. During the first year, how might you go about determining the strengths and weaknesses of our school district? And what specific steps would you take?
Okay, so within the first year, I think right out of the gate, what I would look to do is get to know the leadership team that I want to lead and work with. I want to hear from them what their opinions are, the strengths and the weaknesses of the school are. I also have dug into your data into the state, the Florida State Department of Education page. It's really well done. I wish Arizona had a page like that. I think I'd be able to do a lot of schools and figure out who's the best scores. I went back to your 2019 scores to look at kind of where things stand before the pandemic. I know that you guys just opened a big CTE center. That may be the lead, but that makes me believe that one of the areas that you're looking for, CTE area, that's a lot of strengths that are there.
Okay, I'm sorry. Can you hold on for 1 second?
Yeah, I'm hearing a ton of, yeah.
Thank you. We need to make sure that everybody can hear what he's saying.
Well, it's garbly.
Well, it sounded like it's like gargled,
It did gargle.
gargled,
Garbly. Garble.
garbling.
Garble.
Some of it's smooth, but then others it's. Thank you for your patience.
No worries.
Yes? Okay. Mr. Mallory, do you want to continue now? And let's see how this works.
Sure, yeah, that, that's fine. It seems like when I talk, like I said, when I talk, there's all kinds of like static on your end.
See?
It sounds like somebody needs to be muted.
They have one of the phones that's open back there.
You let him like take a break and go off camera and,
Yeah.
you know, rather than have him sit on camera and.
Yeah, would you like to take about a 3-minute break while they take a look at this technical issue?
Sure, I'm flexible, yeah, no worries.
Well,
Bad for him.
that's a good quality.
better.
Can you go ahead and count to 10 for us, please?
It's a requirement.
Can we cannot hear you.
Okay.
Okay, can you count to 10?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Asking how he sounds to himself.
Say that again?
How does it sound to himself?
How does it sound to you now?
It sounds fine. When you guys are talking, everything sounds great. It's when I start talking that it kind of turns into a little bit staticky. But as of right now, it sounds fine again.
Sound good as well?
Yes.
Okay. So should we continue this way? Should we continue this way?
Okay, we're going to go ahead and try. So you're getting back to Ms. Fisher then. Thank you so much.
Okay. So okay.
Yeah, stay what you're doing right now. Stay the course.
Okay.
You'll open it back up officially, so we
Yes. They're going to open the meeting back up officially, and then we're going to begin, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay. The time is 3:41, and we will resume the interview with Randy Mallerwine. Mr. Mallerwine, did you want me to repeat the question?
That would be great. Yeah. I mean, I think I know it.
Oh,
It's starting to get staticky again. Okay.
during the first year, how might you go about determining the strengths and weaknesses of our district? And what specific steps would you take?
So my initial work would be set on getting to know the executive team that I'd be lucky enough to be leading, and talking to each of them through, what is their expertise, what do they feel are the strengths of the districts, what do they feel are the areas that we need to improve. I'd look to try and consolidate some trend data. Again, it's doing it again. It's starting to do it again. I would look at that data. I would try and look for trends. What do they think is going well? What are the trends that are doing well? I'd look at what do they think. I'm getting stats. I'm sorry, I can't hear now.
Did you want to try putting your phone up and talking right into your phone rather than on
Mute that.
speaker?
And mute
Yeah,
mute the
it was on the
computer.
phone, but yeah, I think I'm gonna have to go through the phone and then just mute everything, and you can see me, but I'll be on my phone.
All right, let's try that.
Okay.
Or everyone, they're calling Ms. Dupree Bruno's phone, and she'll have it on the phone and have the microphone. No, thank you. Thank you. Dr. Mullerwine, they are coming up with a new way for you to call in, so that way that you're not having to go through this. And again, I am so sorry that this is happening to you. Mr. Pre-Bruno, you're going to have to let us know when. It should just be another minute. And I promise you, we tried this for 3 days straight, and it worked.
Hello?
Hello. Can everyone hear me okay now?
Put the volume up.
They're turning the volume up.
You want to try talking one more time?
Yeah, do you want me to run through the 1 through 10 again?
Sure. If you
Sure.
could, please.
Sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
That's better.
Yeah.
Have them start the whole thing over, or just continue?
Okay.
Yes. Oh, hi.
Are we ready?
Yes.
Mr. Malawine, can you hear me?
Doctor.
Yes, ma'am, I can hear you.
Okay. All right, if you want to proceed with your answer, or shall I repeat the question?
Yeah, I got the. I think I remember the question. It's how would I initially determine the strengths and some of the needs of the school district upon arrival. Again, I'm a very team-oriented leader, so I would the first thing I would do is meet individually with all the members of the executive team. I want to hear from them their levels of expertise, what they oversee, and I want them to tell me what do they feel the strengths of the district are, what do they feel the needs or the areas of improvement would be, and then I would look for trend data. I would probably also want to carry through that a couple layers, meet with the executive directors, meet with the directors, hear what the strengths are, hear what they feel the needs are. I would like to hear with the teacher association groups that are involved, whether they're in the administrator association groups, the classified association groups, and also any influential parent groups or parent groups that are available. And I would want to I really want to do a listening session. My number one form of communication is listening. I think that's the first thing that I would want to do, and I would want to gather basically trend data and hear what they feel are the strengths and what they feel are the areas of need. The other thing is I've been looking at the Florida page, the Department of Ed page. It's super comprehensive. There's a lot of data I've already pulled out of there. I went back to 2019 because I wanted to see where Lee County was prior to the pandemic, because I know we've all struggled through the pandemic between jumping from virtual and hybrid and back, and kids with a lot of opportunity learning opportunity loss. So I would really look to listening to stakeholders, starting with the executive team that I'd be lucky enough to work with, work all the way down through those layers of leadership, but parents, community members, business members, local leaders. I'd want to hear from everybody, and then I want to look for trend data and then have conversations about that. That's where I would begin in the first few months of arriving.
That's awesome and pretty comprehensive. So with that, unless you have anything else to add, I will pass you on now to Mrs. Giovanelli, our District 2 representative.
Hi, thank you for your patience.
No worries. That's kind of what we do, right?
Right. Yes. How would you build a good working relationship between the board and the superintendent? Please cite examples.
So working with the school board, the first thing is, again, one-on-one, be able to have individual meetings and listen, really listen, and to each member, hear what each member, what their areas of, again, what they believe are the strengths, what they believe are weaknesses, the areas they believe to go, what do they think has done well, where do they see the future, what do they know about local business, what do they know about the community that they represent. But more than anything, I think it's about building a relationship based on open communication, sense of urgency through communication. One of the things I do now is I keep everybody informed in the moment, so there's never a surprise, there's never a blind side. The board members, my superintendent allows me to communicate with her and with the school board, and I make sure school board members are never blindsided. They know issues before they would hit the community and definitely before they would hit the news. But I would also want to share with each board member my leadership style, who I am, what are the things that I believe strongly in, the levels of integrity that I bring to everything I do. Because the first thing is, my goal coming out with every single human being that I get to work with is I'm going to earn their trust. First people that I'm going to earn the trust is going to be with the school board that I'm lucky enough to work with, and then the executive team that I'm lucky enough to lead at times and other times be a teammate with. But it's my job to earn that trust. It's my job to build that trust. And that's where I would want to start with each board member individually. I've been working with school boards and school board members for a number of years, and I understand kind of the ins and outs, and everybody has a different group that they listen to, and I want to learn that. I want to get a feel of that, and I want to honor that. But I also want to communicate quickly at a high level, crystal clear. But I think more than anything, I want the relationship that I have the school that I would build with the school board built on trust that I establish with early, and that I maintain often, and that I never let people down with.
Thank you.
Ms. Patrica?
Good afternoon. I'm Chris Patrica. How are you? Thank you for your patience. I'm sorry to put you in these circumstances. You're handling it really, really well. My question is, please describe a time or a setting where inequity and implied bias came to light, and from your position, how you addressed it, and what were the individual and/or organizational outcomes?
I could come up with a few of them. I'd like to narrow it down to a situation that I just had with one of the high schools I lead. I could probably come up with a few, but we have a high school that I work with that has been kind of the landmark high school in the district for a number of years. It was voted top 25 high school nationally a number of years ago. It sort of had stagnated, and we needed to replace the leader. We replaced the leader. I believe very strongly in integrity and leadership. We replaced the leader with an elementary principal, which is very unorthodox. But when you identify the right human being that can lead and connect with people, then that's the decision to be made. So we replaced the high school leader, who was also a good gentleman. It was time to make a move. And we had recently, and there had been rumors of some bias and some racial tension within the school. Well, the school over the last 10 years, the demographics have changed. It went from a school that was very much a white upper middle class school to what is now kind of a middle class, upper middle class, but very diverse school. And we had a situation where there was some racial content written on a wall. I worked hand in hand with the principal on how to bring in the right stakeholders, the right people to have a conversation, because we needed to get out in front of it very quickly. We needed to identify that we have a different leader. So the things that had happened at this school in the past, and the rumors were, and some of the feeling was that these things were swept under the rug in the past. We got out in front of it early. We communicated with the right stakeholders. We made sure that they knew in our hearts, me working hand by hand with the leader, myself and the leader, our hearts are about equity. Our hearts are about opportunities, who we were. We were bringing student stakeholders together, staff stakeholders together, community stakeholders together to talk about the plan, to talk about the educational approach, the communication approach, that we were going to deal with this, and this types of behavior. Maybe it was something 5 years ago, 8 years ago that would be overlooked, but that's not the new administration. That's not who we are. And I think and this was very recent, and I think over the last 6 weeks, we have built a little bit of trust. We are bringing groups of students together, groups of diverse stakeholders together, and we're talking about our plan, and we're developing a plan together to create psychological safety, to create a place where every student has agency and voice in their learning and has a place at the school. So that's one very specific situation I've dealt with. I dealt with it in the last 2 months, but these are situations that popped up throughout my career. I spent 16 years in a very urban school district, and there it was a little different. There was what I used to refer to as institutionalized racism, where sometimes we would water down IEPs because we had a community of we had a Latino community that didn't speak English, so we would water down IEPs, and we weren't giving the kids what they needed. And I worked very diligently to make sure that we would write the same high levels of integrity within the IEPs and the instruction for all of our students. And then I was able to work 6 years in a very affluent school district in South Gilbert, which is one of our most affluent areas. And I dealt with a whole different set of equity and biased issues. And so I have quite a bit of experience in that, but I just wanted to give you an example of one specific one. But I do have, my whole career has been about working to ensure equity in all things that we do in schools.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Is there any way to turn up the volume on this end? My concern is people trying to listen back to this and not being able to. I don't know how it's coming out on the video, so.
no,
My concern is me hearing it.
yeah,
That's what I'm saying.
they'll be able to hear
But can we?
in the back.
But it's a strain.
Ms. Dupree, Bruno, and I'm sorry again, I apologize. Is there a way you can add that second mic over there to that? The second mic right here?
Let me ask them, let me go ask.
No, just,
They have to set it up, so let me go ask them.
okay,
And there might be feedback from the second mic.
yeah. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and continue as she's researching that. My question is, please share a time when a plan or a major objective did not turn out successfully, and describe what you did to change that effort, and how was that situation improved? Please, and thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So again, I believe in teams of distributed expertise to solve adaptive challenges. So I always work in a team. I never work in isolation. But one thing is a principle that I live on is authenticity and character. I don't know if I've ever had a situation that I stayed the course with that didn't end up successful, because when I see something that's not not working, if I see something that is deviating from the plan, we come together and we pivot and we try something different. We learn from the mistakes that we made early and we pivot. And I think sometimes one thing that I would say that I'm proud of is that my ego doesn't get involved when I make decision makings and when I have to lead a situation. So as the leader, if we as a team make a call, we move in a direction, I take ownership of the missteps. I reconvene the team. We talk about what has happened, what wasn't going right, and we make immediate steps to change it. So I hate to say that that hasn't happened because I don't want to sound arrogant, but we get involved quickly and we pivot and we make a decision, and it usually will end up. I can't think of a time that I saw a plan carried out to fruition that didn't have elements of success, because when the goals or the direction the team and I and the team that I led were going in, when we saw that we weren't getting the results that we needed, then we have to humbly come back to the table and say, what did we do wrong? And fix that and make solutions on the fly. We deal with children's lives, and every year is a critical year. And so we have to move quickly when we see that something's not working right. And I just have a sense of urgency to always be seeing those things through the right way. So I would say that I haven't experienced that, because I'll jump up and take ownership and ask for help, and we will correct the situation, because I've always been surrounded, by a team of 5, 6, 7, 8 smart individuals, and somebody can come up with something that we haven't thought of. But I can establish that because I build teams of psychological safety where we all understand the rules of engagement. We all have a voice in the room. And so there's never an idea that gets left on the table because of how I develop teams.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that answer. And I'm turning it over to Ms. Gittens now.
Good afternoon and welcome. I want to make sure I'm saying your name correct. Is it Mallerwine?
Mallerwine, yes.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon. My question is, America is facing a vast teacher shortage. What strategies would you put in place to combat that crisis?
Yes, ma'am. Wow, that is something that I'm passionate about, and I currently lead this effort in Mesa Public Schools. We, like every major comprehensive school district, are having a teacher shortage. I personally believe that it's because we have created an environment that is not suitable for what we're asking teachers to do. We're humans, and we've been spawned from mammals, and we are built to work together in groups and teams. And one thing we've done is we have asked teachers, and I can speak to an elementary teacher. We've asked the teacher to go into a classroom with 25 kids, and we've asked them to try and figure out the genetic code for each of those 25 kids. And then for 6 to 7 hours a day, over 180 days, try to get each of these children to connect with us and learn at a deep level that then is going to be assessed on a standardized test that may or may not test the things that the kids learn, because we have such a vast amount of things that we learn. And when you look at a high school teacher, now you have a high school teacher, let's just say you have a Algebra 1 teacher, because I know that Lee County's in 2019, your algebra scores were down 15 points. So let's talk algebra. You have an algebra teacher that has 5 periods a day, 30 kids. So now she has 150 children, or he has 150 students to teach algebra 1 hour a day for 180 days. That's a big ask. So how would I address the shortage? I would create better working environments for our teachers. I think teachers are built and should be working in teams collaboratively, coming together to share strengths. I like to use the term teams of distributed expertise. I have a whole plan that I can lay out for you over the course of a couple hours on how this works. I'm doing this in the schools that I work in right now. We're creating teams of distributed expertise where teachers co-create, co-plan, and co-design lessons together, where they are co-mingling content, and then that content, we're asking students within these environments to have agency, to connect relevancy, cultural and societal relevancy to content with complex outcomes and collaborate. That is what we want our kids to do, because we want our kids to be not only career, but college, but community ready. So you bring teachers together, co-create, co-design lessons. Now you have teachers working in the same environment that you're asking students to work in. It's really hard to, from my level, here's where I think we've made a big mistake and why there's a teacher shortage. I think we have executive teams that create compliance-based environments for site-level leaders. I think our site-level leaders then take the lead, create compliance-based environments for teachers, and then we ask our teachers, create this engaging, creative environment where kids can live into their passions and the natural human ability to be curious and discover, and it really doesn't work. So I think we have to start with creating different environments, and those environments have to be built on teams of distributed expertise where we work together, because we know as human beings, we feel better when we work together, we produce better results when we work together, and we can share distributed expertise. Now you might have 100 kids being shared by 3 teachers. You could have an IA in the room, you push in a special ed. Now you have 5 adults. You have 5 adults sharing 100 kids. There's somebody in that room that every kid can connect with. And we know that human connection is what keeps us coming back to work and why we would want to be at work. And so when teachers don't show up for work, teachers are leaving the profession. I'm asking myself, what's wrong with the environment we put them in? Because if we create the right environment and there's passion in what they do, and we let them take back their professions with a little bit of autonomy and again, that passion, I think people will stay in the profession.
Can you just give us just one quick little example of that executive teams creating compliance-based environments, just so that we make sure I understand that?
Absolutely. So I get to work with a phenomenal principal at Westwood High School. You can Google it. And we got what's called a 9th grade academy there. We're all 9th grade teachers, because we know grade 9 is the most pivotal year to get kids to graduation. We know we lose a lot of kids in grade 9. We know how important it is. So when they have teams that work together collaboratively, and I'll speak of one team that I experienced, and I'll talk about my experience with them at the end of last year. So at the end of a pandemic where we were very stressed, I think we can all agree we went through a lot last school year trying just to take care of one another. We had a biology teacher, an English teacher, and a math teacher, and they were collaborating, and they talked to their students, and their students decided they wanted to do a unit on Romeo and Juliet. And when I looked at the teachers, I thought, kids want to do Romeo and Juliet? You know, it seems like Shakespeare. But to be honest, I think Leonardo DiCaprio might have kind of inspired a whole group of kids. So yeah, they wanted to do Romeo and Juliet. So they sat with the kids, and they came up with a comprehensive lesson that went through what's it called, when we had forensics unit. They did math, and they integrated math in there. Obviously, there was reading, there was writing in there. So the 3 content areas co-created this unit together. And then the most incredible thing was they gave the students, before they started, said, these are the standards that we want you to master at the end of this 6th unit. And then at the end of this unit, we are going to let you tell us how you mastered those students. Students were doing TikTok, students were drawing murals, and there was 100% engagement, and you could just see the learning. When I went, and so because I'm involved, they asked me, hey, will you come over and see the school? Absolutely, it was something I wanted to see. It had the hair stand up on the back of your neck, these kids just being so engaged in Romeo and Juliet, and seeing the forensic unit with biology and the mathematics that come in on, you know, the thrust of the sword, and they tied so many things in, because there was a sword fight that happened in Romeo and Juliet. I just thought it was amazing, and what it was an example of teachers co-creating comprehensive, complex learning opportunities for students that have cultural and societal relevance.
Okay, thank you so much for explaining that. Next question is by Ms. Vaughn.
Greetings, Dr. Malloron Wine. I'm Betsy Vaughn, District 6. If there were a conflict between different community groups in the district over a particular issue, how might you resolve it? And if you can, cite some examples that you have used to resolve conflicts.
So a conflict between two separate communities.
Between different community groups over a
Different
particular
community groups.
issue.
Yes, ma'am, I can talk to that. You know, I'm very fortunate that the superintendent I work with is very collaborative, and we do work in a team. So, I mean, I can talk very specifically about an issue I know that you guys went through last year was the mask issue, and we had communities on either side. And so what we did was a number of surveys that went out. We wanted to get a feel from the different sets, different communities. We wanted to we did Facebook Lives very frequently to communicate where we were and where we were getting our information from. We communicated very clearly on our process and our mitigation strategies, and then we used basically the survey. We used all pieces of what we went through to make a decision. And what our decision was we did a number of mitigation strategies, but at the end of the day, when our masks, we decided to make masks optional. And you can imagine that we had one group of people, well, we had multiple groups that were unhappy. It wasn't any way to make anybody happy, but we were very clear on the reasons why, and we were very clear on why we came to that decision. We communicated it early, we communicated often, and we stayed with it. And of course, there were some people who weren't happy, some people were happy, but at the end of the day, everybody knew where we stood and why we stood there. And I'm not sure if there was a way to win that, but I think we listened, we heard, we communicated very well, and then we made a decision. And once we made a decision, we kind of stayed with the decision. And one thing I was very proud of is we're a very large district. We're the largest district in Arizona, somewhere between 58 and 62,000 students, depending on the year. And we had more days in person. There was only one school district that had more days in person than we did last year. And we also opened a virtual school, which all of that came out from this mass conversation. This mass conversation opened up a whole bunch of different ideas and pathways for us to go down for solutions, because we knew we had a group of parents that would not want to be Mesa Public School parents if we went to a mask optional. So we created a virtual school. We created a great pathway to instruction there, a great pathway for curriculum, a great communication piece there. And so we also created a hybrid models. We did a lot of technology where, and we did a lot of different scheduling. I asked our high schools to come out and redo master schedules 2 weeks before our winter break, because we knew where we were going to move in this direction. You can imagine what that looks like with a group of administrators and but as a team that is built on trust, we all came together and we did it. But the mass situation was very polarizing for a lot of people, and I think the solution was we let all voices heard. We're good.
Okay. Like, no.
Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Are we, tech team, are we good to go? If you're not deaf after that, I think I
don't know if he
am.
heard it.
Good to go.
Okay, can we move along? thank you for your answer, and going to pass this. Can you hear? Nod if you can hear me.
I can hear. It's a little staticky. I got you. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to pass along the next question with Mrs. Kathleen Morgan.
Hello, Dr. Mallerwine. Welcome. What has been your success as a school leader in partnering with higher education and the business community? Please mention the partnerships that have developed as a result of your leadership.
I couldn't hear the last. I heard partnership with higher education and business. What was mine? I didn't hear the rest of that. Could you repeat that, please?
I'll read it, the whole thing again. What has been your success as a school leader in partnering with higher education and the business community? Please mention the partnerships that have developed as a result of your leadership.
Okay. Yeah, so when I came to Mesa Public Schools, we had a retreat, and we had a retreat with ASU, and one of their big initiatives is what's called the Next Education Workforce. And when I listened to it, it really resonated in my heart. So, you know, it was easy for me to see this could be the future of education. So I embraced it. And I just think through my work ethic, the way I communicate, the way I build trust and relationships, the schools that I work with were the first ones to start to pilot some of this pathway from ASU. Through the work I was able to do with the leaders that I got to lead, I guess I was noticed by our superintendent and noticed by Dean Basile, and I became our liaison for Mesa Public Schools. So now I meet weekly with the executive director of the Next Education Workforce from ASU. And I get to talk to Dean Basile. She's kind. She answers my phone calls, and we'll have breakfast every now and then. But there's a partnership between Mesa Public Schools and Arizona State University, which has been voted one of the most innovative universities for the last 5 or 6 years. And I spearhead that. I spearhead that relationship. I think you can look at my letters of recommendation and you can see that they reflect that. In the middle of that, I was able to connect with Dr. Lindy Elkins-Tanton, who is an interplanetary scientist who's putting a rocket on an asteroid to mine a metal that doesn't exist on Earth. That still blows me away that we partner. Well, the partnership with her is that she teaches her class at the university through what's called Next Natural Question, which is an inquiry pathway. It's a pathway where there's a lot of student agency in the learning, and the learning is at very deep levels. I really believe passionately in deeper and personalized learning for kids, because that's where the connection needs to happen for them to move into the workforce of the future. We know the workforce of the future is changing, and the jobs that are going to be there in 5 years don't even exist yet. Well, how are we preparing our students for that? So I have this relationship built with ASU, and through that relationship, I've been able to attend quite a few events and have conversations. Right before winter break, I was able to meet the CEO of Honeywell, and through the conversation that we had with him, we are now going to take and have a comprehensive internship. We're going to have a shadow program. We're going to, one of the things that I believe is implementing community educators in the school. So we're going to bring community educators into the school to work on teams, to work with teams of teachers, back to that teaming of distributed expertise, right? Who better than a aerospace engineer to come in there and then help talk about trigonometry and propulsion. So I head up that. I am the point person for Mesa Public Schools and ASU. And then through the work I did with there, I was able to connect with former state representative Heather Carter, who is the CEO of the Greater Phoenix Leadership Group, and now I am leading the effort to partnering with that group, because what we're seeing is, and it really connects with your strategic initiatives for the future on connection with business, connection with industry, building these partnerships. So I'm already doing some of that work. So now I'm going to be working with the Greater Phoenix Leadership Group. So to do what we're going to do with Honeywell, we're going to do with Boeing, we're going to do with SMM Metal, we're going to do it. I don't do anything independently. It's always a team. So I always want to make sure my team is well represented when I talk about things. So a couple principals and we went out, we met with the head operations guy for Empire Cat. And Empire Cat is a company that you see those big excavators that are enormous, that you have to break them apart, put them on trailers, and well, you don't really buy new ones. You fix the ones that are broken. It's more economical, and Empire Cat does that. But what they're lacking is they're lacking entry-level workforce. So I went out there, walked their plant, saw what they're doing, talked to them about what do they need, talked to them about what we could provide to them. Then we get in with our welding kids, we get in with our automotive kids that are mechanically inclined, and we let them know about these future opportunities. I mean, it's an amazing, there's amazing things out there for kids that aren't necessarily geared for college, or at least college right away, as we know that prefrontal lobe is still developing in a lot of our young men, but we can get them into the workforce, they can make money, they can learn in there. And so we're building those partnerships. That's really the focus of what I do every day, that and lead the principals I'm lucky enough to work with. So that's an example of what I'm doing. There's a lot more that really goes into that. I mean, that again could be, I mean, I could walk you guys through the outline of how we've built that, but it comes down to understanding what industry is looking for. And they're calling them professional skills, but it's the same stuff. They want kids that can collaborate. They want kids that can contribute. They want human beings that can come into the workforce and problem solve and critically think and communicate. And what they're saying is we are not seeing students coming in and that can do these things. So what do we need to do in our schools is we need to figure out ways to produce these human beings that can walk into this part of the workforce and connect with business. I don't know a business that is not dealing with adaptive challenges. Adaptive challenges cannot be solved by the one-person hero leader. You need a team of collective expertise to come together to solve these adaptive challenges and then ultimately create adaptive change. And that's what industry is asking for. So that has to start mirroring what we're doing in the classroom in some regard. And obviously you can't go 0 to 120 and do that, but you start out in places where where you have your your believers, for lack of a better term. You have your people that just have an innovative mindset, a natural creative mindset, and you start there. And what happens is when you start there in the classroom, they experience joy that they haven't experienced before, and then they tell their colleagues, and now you got more people, and it grows. And I was able to go. I was able to start with basically one school and one grade level at the beginning of a pandemic, and the team that I was lucky enough to lead, we ended the pandemic with 18 of our schools working in this environment at the end of a pandemic, motivated, connecting with business, connecting with industry. And it all happened through the relationship that I built with ASU and the relationships that I build with former Representative Carter and now the Greater Phoenix Leadership Council and CEOs and anybody that's coming to the table, we're going to talk about, because as a large public school district, Mesa Public Schools, we not only are crafting human beings for the future, we are responsible for making the city of Mesa a better place to live, and that would be Lee County, and hopefully next year.
I love your passion and excitement answering this question. Thank you very much.
No kidding.
I'm going to turn you over to Ms. Fisher.
Thank you. Dr. Mallerwine. And I also enjoyed that last answer. That was really spot on. As superintendent, what would be your role in the budgetary process? Please specify.
My role in the budgetary process would be to to listen very intently to the experts that have been hired to work in the budgetary process in Lee County. One thing that I think is important is for me to understand, and the team that I work with will to help me understand where are the areas that we need to grow, and then looking at our budgetary process and trying to figure out where what dollars would be available to boost that. I saw you guys opened, I believe it was last year, a CTE center. I think that might be something that we could look at to expand. I believe that the career and technical education is invaluable. I think that we have to create pathways for every student. But the other thing that's really critical for me is teacher salaries. We need to pay our educators better than a living wage. We need to pay them for their value. And I know about 90% to 88 to 90% of the budget is spent on salaries. I think it's critical that Lee County is, if not at the top, we are very competitive. We stay competitive. We create the environment. We're not going to have teacher shortage issues. So, for me, look, I took all the classes. I've been on executive teams. I've heard the budget conversations, but I know that that's not a strength of mine. So I would listen to the experts, and if I wasn't sure what I was hearing was right, then I would look to consultation with other experts. I mean, there are people out there to help public school. There are people out there that want to communicate and add value, and it's my job to identify those people. If I have any strength, I identify good people very quickly, and I've always been able to identify good people quickly, and I've always been able to listen to them and be able to understand the direction we need to go. Or when I say we, the organization that when I've been an executive, the executive team. One district called it cabinet. We call it superintendency here. It's the upper level leadership. When I say executive team, that's what I'm referring to. But I glanced at your guys' org chart. I didn't have it memorized, but I think it was really well done. I remember going, wow, this looks really good. But I know you have experts in this area, and I would spend a lot of time with them early to get a real understanding. And obviously, if I had questions, I would ask them, and that's where I would go with that.
Well, thank you for that explanation. That's excellent. At this time, I'll pass you back now to Mrs. Giovanelli.
Thank you. What experience have you had in working with a community of diverse elements, such as socioeconomic and educational levels, culture, race, and ethnicity? Please explain the detail.
So, I grew up in what you would call working class poverty. When the economy was good, things were better. When the economy was bad, there was struggle. When I left the university, I searched for an urban school district. I think because I wanted to create a better experience for children in school than I had. So I spent 16 years in the most urban communities in Phoenix. I was in South Phoenix as a teacher, Central Phoenix as a teacher, and then I was an administrator in West Phoenix. The area where I was the administrator, that's...
Let's try it again.
I think, can I continue maybe?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Okay, so I worked in that community as administrator for 8 years. The only reason I relocated to South Gilbert was because I started a family and I couldn't drive 50 minutes every day, and it broke my heart to leave. But so let me just describe the community that I worked in. we were 99% free and reduced lunch because 1% just didn't fill out the forms. It was 94% Latino, 5% Black, and then we had other. I took the school that I led to. We were the highest growth school in the state. I had the highest growth number in the state, and we ended up on a B label. But what I learned most is about how to communicate and that community that I worked with. So, it was, for me there, it was about taking care of kids, making them feel a sense of belonging, making them feel that school was a place for them. So, I have a ton of experience working with kids in poverty. I have a ton of experience working with the Latino population. And now in Mesa, the demographics of our school district are very similar to Lee. I think Lee County has about 10% more Black than we do, but our Latino population is a little larger, and our white population is just a little smaller. But, I spend a lot of time out in that community. I would do home visits in that community. We would have community events in that community. And I didn't really struggle too much communicating. I understand what people in poverty go through. I understand where their hearts are at. They're just like, people. Everybody loves their kids. Everybody wants what's best for their kids. So you just communicate to them like you would want you to be communicated with. So I understand what it's like to work with those communities. I think, again, it gets back to me listening and understanding the hidden dynamics of each community, because every neighborhood is a little different. The one thing that I did tackle that I saw and I mentioned earlier was I noticed that there was a lot of watered down IEPs, and I wanted to make sure that our kids that had learning disabilities, which we know they just learn differently, were getting what they needed in the classroom, in the community that maybe was uneducated or didn't understand the IEP or couldn't be communicated the right way. Well, that's my job. My job was to make sure that they were done the right way. Now, since I've moved to Mesa Public Schools, we have seen all our behaviors of dysfunction increase. I mean, we had a lot of kids that were at home with no supervision, cramped up spaces, and we brought them back to school. We had, like everywhere else, we've had the TikTok issues. We've had bomb threats. We've had shooter threats. And, as the superintendent, it's my job to work hand in hand with the principals and the leadership and the directors. And, I get involved. Generally, I'm the one that goes out and communicates with the community, because I just have always had a way to communicate empathy and care, but also give them the information that they're looking for. So, I have a ton of understanding of poverty, and I have a ton of understanding working with diverse communities. I'm a first generation college kid, and to go through and get a couple master's degrees and a doctorate, I'm proud of that, but I also understand the struggle that our communities go through, and I understand how to communicate, build relationships, how to teach leaders how to communicate, build relationships to lessen that struggle. We have to support our communities in struggle, through that struggle, and we have to give them a vision of another tomorrow. We have to reset the stars. One thing that I've done in Mesa Public Schools is I've built an international scholar program, which is basically recruiting foreign exchange. We don't exchange kids, so it's really not foreign exchange. So I call it international scholar. When I got to Mesa, there were, I think, 27 students, and 7 of them were F1 students, which paid tuition. In a pandemic, I've scaled that to 124. Of those 124, 117 of them are paying tuition. So we are able to support students. We're just not educating the world for free. But what we are doing, we are bringing a diverse group of kids into our schools, kids of color, kids from a diverse background, to connect with kids that don't get to see the world. So because you will grow up in poverty, you might not get an opportunity to see the world. So I'm going to bring the world to you. And so now you can communicate with somebody from Brazil, somebody from Vietnam, somebody from, let me think of another couple countries we have that I know of so I don't misspeak, Colombia, Kazakhstan. We have 18 different countries represented, and now you have kids that would never have that experience, getting that experience. Now they can pick up their cell phone, get an internet connection, connect with a child that looks like them, that speaks a foreign language anytime, and that can change your stars, and that can change your possibilities. So there's a lot of things I think about when I'm talking about how do we ensure equity. You know, we ensure equity through voice. We ensure equity through content being societal but culturally relevant. We ensure equity by creating different experiences. How do we change kids in poverty's attitude? We change their experience at school. We change, we make sure that there's somebody they can connect to and build a sense of belonging with. So that's what I've learned in my 16 years, and now my last 3 years back working with kids of poverty. So, yeah, I'd like to talk about the other side. I don't know if there's going to be a question, but I have worked on increasing AP scores. I have worked on bringing AP capstone to a school district that didn't have an IB program, didn't have AP capstone, because I believe there has to be a pathway for every student in the schools that I'm lucky enough to lead.
Thank you.
I'm just going to interrupt for 1 minute and say that it is now 4:36, and we are halfway through the questions, but we have a half hour left. So
I'll read fast.
we'll proceed, and, you know, and if we need a couple minutes at the end, we have a little time built in for that.
I'll be quicker.
And I'm sorry, Ms. Fisher, based on the issues that we had in advance, we
Yes.
would have added it would end at 5:20 if we added that time back in.
Okay, all right, so we'll add a few minutes on so that we can make up for the time lost with our technical difficulties. Thank you.
Chris Patrica here. Your next question is, what would you do to positively impact student achievement? Please discuss in detail successful efforts to narrow or close identified achievement gaps in your current district.
Okay, so I've only been in my current district. I'm in my 3rd year. So, you know, we went into COVID in March, and now this year, what we've been dealing a lot with is the learning opportunity loss. But what I can talk to you about is how to close the achievement gap. And can I speak to that just in general then, because of where I'm at with my current district?
Yes, please.
So in my current district, what we are doing is we're doing comprehensive professional development on our multi-tiered systems of support. So we are looking at, we have a fast bridge diagnostic assessment that we've given to all students. What I like about that is there's also a social emotional component to that. And now, you know, we're halfway through the school year, so we're looking at the data. We've given the second assessment. We're looking at that data, and then we're looking at what can we do with the very specific data that we're gathering to whether we're, you know, whether we're looking at increasing phonemic awareness, fluency, main idea, vocabulary. What are we looking for, or what are we looking to improve? And then we are breaking those kids out into very systematic interventions. What I have done in the past as an administrator and a leader at a district level is obviously we'll use a screener, and then we would look at that data, and we would pull small groups within the classroom that would deal with kids very, very specifically. So we do in the class tier 2 instruction, and then the kids that weren't exited right away or didn't move on. It has to be very fluid. We would create a tier 3 system of intervention to work with those kids that then couldn't be exited out of a tier 3 system intervention. We would look at and see if they would classify for quite possibly special ed or with a learning disability. As a secondary person, we really look closely. I really look closely. We monitor failure rates, which we call success rates. We look at our success rates in those areas where we have deficiency in those success rates, and we go back in and we're doing small group instruction. We're pulling kids out for intervention there, but we're also looking on how are we creating what are we doing for credit recovery. My last, I guess, 4 of the last 6 years when I've been on an executive team, I've been over secondary. So what I work on a lot is credit recovery. How do we get kids to graduate? How do we get kids to get credit, to get caught up with their credit? But what I've always used in my other district and how we had the greatest, we had the highest growth in the state was we used a diagnostic screener. And that's where we started, and we pulled small group in the classroom tier 2 instruction. Why I believe that worked is because the teachers in the classrooms knew their kids. When you pull a group of kids to a teacher they don't know, they don't have that personal connection. So we did tier 2 instruction in the classroom, and then we did a round 2 of that tier 2 instruction in the classroom, and then we also had tier 3 pull-out intervention, where we would pull kids out of, it would just depend on what their schedule looked like. It might be an elective, it might be a social studies class, but it was all, but the silver bullet to get kids to close the achievement gap is small group instruction, which leads right into the science behind deliver practice. You want 5 to 8 kids, very intensive, for 8 to 10 minutes with an expert working very intently with those children, and that's how we close the gap. That's how I've always closed the achievement gap.
Thank you very much.
Okay, back with me again. So the next question is, what do you consider to be your major strengths as an administrator? What have you targeted for personal and professional improvements?
I couldn't hear the word you said before, professional
That's okay.
improvements. What did I?
It says, what do you consider to be your major strengths as administrator? What have you targeted for personal or professional improvement?
What is my strength? My greatest strength as a leader is humility. I embrace humility. I live by a motto, earn my title every day. Every day I show up, I walk out of the parking garage, I see that Mesa Public School emblem, and I just tell myself, earn that title today. And so my greatest leadership strength is humility, self-reflection, and just earning that title every day. What have I done? Well, in 2010, I finished my doctorate program, and I had enough textbooks to last me a while. So I decided that I was going to start reading and chasing down the type of content that interests me, and that's leadership. And that's leadership and I wouldn't say self-help, I would say self-development. And so I don't read the regular education leadership books. I read leadership books. I'll humbly tell you that I don't know anybody that does more of that than I do. I'm always the most well-read person in the room. It's just weird saying that out loud, but I guess I need you guys to know. I also spend a lot of time, if I hear something or read something, I'll jump on it and I'll chase down as many podcasts as I can find to understand things. I think if I have a skill, if I have a real skill that I share quite often is I can take a number of pieces that I read and I can kind of bring them together into what we do, and then I can communicate that so other people understand it. But I'm always going to be the hardest worker in the room, and if that means I got to read more, then I'm going to read more. If it means I got to listen to more podcasts, that means I'll do that. If I got to look at more data, then I'll do that. But my greatest strength, and I know it didn't sound like that from the answer in that question, but I would say it's humility.
No, thank you so very much. I really appreciate that. Ms. Gittens?
Okay. how would you handle decisions that are unpopular with the public but educationally necessary? Please cite any actual examples.
So I have kind of like a pretty stable foundation in what I believe in leadership. I believe in a number of leadership mindsets that I operate under at all times. One of them is ownership. And so if the executive team that I work with, if the school board that I get to work with, if we come together and we make a decision that we know is going to be unpopular, then that's my decision. I'm going to own that. I'm going to protect the team I work with. I'm going to protect the school board that I work with, and I'm going to own that decision. But what I'm also going to do is communicate that decision in a way that people understand it. And then I'm going to ask for grace to give us time to see it to fruition, because once the community gets to know me, they'll know I'm a person of integrity. I'll be earning trust every single interaction, every single day I come to work. And there'll come a time where that we will get grace when we have to make those tough decisions in Lee County, because we'll have a track record to prove it. But to answer your question, as superintendent, I own everything in Lee County. It's my responsibility, and it would either be my responsibility to communicate something better so a problem didn't happen. It would be my responsibility to fix a problem that did happen. But at the end of the day, it's my responsibility to communicate the decisions and own those decisions. And I think I communicate well. I can communicate with all facets of people. That's a strength of mine, is probably, I can communicate with, my dad, the construction worker, and I can communicate with my best friend, the skull-based surgeon. And I can do everybody in between. And I think through that style of communication and modeling the work ethic that I will model, and I would just own every decision, and it might take a bit of time, but the community would learn to trust and give us grace to show them why the decisions that are made are being made, and we'll have good outcomes.
Thank you so much. Very, very good answer.
Okay, Betsy Vaughn, give us some specific ideas of how you would judge your own effectiveness as a superintendent and how the board should evaluate your work.
It was always going to be one question, right? I think initially I would look at the dynamics of the executive team that I lead, and look at the dynamics and look for the signals in the room on how we interacted as a team, because that's the team I'm going to spend a lot of time with. The other thing I would be interested is, I'm going to ask some hard questions with school board members about my performance, and I would take all that feedback as a very serious. One thing that I've learned over the last few years, when you get to a certain level, it's hard to get feedback. It's hard to get authentic feedback because you're the supervisor. So I have some strategies on how I ask questions to get feedback. What I do, though, is I'm always looking for signals. There's always signals if you're observant to how the people around you are performing and how the people around you are reacting to you. So I would be looking at those signals. But hopefully, we would have data we could look at, at the end of the year. But after 1 year of data, you kind of need a baseline. So it might take a few years to really look at data. I think it would be important for me to communicate with the different leaders of the different stakeholder groups and listen to their feedback on my performance, and where they feel their needs are being met. And also, what are the pain points? What are the pain points out there? And am I listening to those and addressing those. I think the first year it would be very difficult to really gauge academically the impact that I could possibly bring to Lee County. I think that would be more of something that the team I would work with would be working with together, and that would be our team effort. Obviously delivered by driven by myself, but I would hope that I would establish a relationship with school board members and key stakeholders so I could get honest feedback on areas that I would need to improve on.
Thank you so much for your answer.
Hello again. Please describe your beliefs about student discipline and safety.
Well, I learned a long time ago that the first correlate of an effective school is to have a safe and orderly environment. I think we have to have clear expectations, but the environment is always set by the leader. Obviously, me as the leader of a huge comprehensive school district, I would be able to set that tone and model that tone with the team that I work with. But we would have to. I look at discipline data quite often because it's definitely a reflection on what's going on. If you don't have a safe and orderly environment, that correlates in low academic achievement. Having said that, I don't really believe in. There has to be a place for every child to go to school. Sometimes the comprehensive high school is not the right place because, for example, I have a 3,400 kid high school, and 3,300 kids come to school every day to do their best, and we might have 100 kids that are being disruptive, and we have to either come up with interventions or alternative placements. There is a time and a place for short-term suspension, and there's a time and a place for a child to go to an alternative setting. I think it's critical, though, that every leader of every school understands that the environment has to start with respect and dignity. When you create an environment of respect and dignity, generally the student behaviors will follow. And student behavior is always a complex situation because there's home environments, there's the teacher environment, there is the other student environment, and is this a one-off event? Is this multiple events? So, generally the last few years, I haven't really been too far in the weeds with the principals and how they discipline kids, although I do set the tone on respect and dignity, and we have to have a place for all kids to learn. I don't believe that kids can end up on the street, but I also believe there has to be a safe environment for the kids that come there to learn, they come there to participate and be successful. It's a pretty complex question, and I'm not sure if there's one blanket answer. I think there has to be. You have to take a lot of different things into consideration when you're working with the disciplining of students and you're working with the behaviors of students. But I can tell you, I believe very strongly that as an educator, we have to stand for respect and dignity. And generally, environments with respect and dignity have far fewer discipline situations than environments that don't.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Ms. Fisher?
Yes. Sorry. Thank you, Dr. Malawine. Given the changing dynamics of public education, what do you see as critical issues in the next 5 years?
Well, I think first, the most critical issue is, are we preparing human beings to exit, when they exit our system, to be successful into whatever pathway they decide to follow? We have to provide a pathway, a highly rigorous pathway, and a rigorous pathway for kids that want to follow down a pathway of academics. we have to create career and technical opportunities for kids to walk out not only with a graduation, not only to be able to graduate, but what's a plus? Can they have an industry certification? Is there something else that they can walk out into the workforce with and get themselves a job and be a contributing member of society? And then, obviously we are going through right now, there is a lot of social situations that we are going through, and we need to increase and ensure equity for all of our students. And I do mean all of our students. We have to create equitable environments that everybody has an opportunity to be successful with the same type of supports, and get people to the other side of public education into what would be a successful career or be successful at a secondary level. I think you guys mentioned the teacher shortage. That is an issue, and it's really an issue when you start talking about some of our higher level courses. It's really hard to find calculus teachers. It's really hard to find teachers that can teach differentiated equations, classes like that, physics, honors chemistry. We need to look at what some of the stuff that I do in my position now as I work with the team, trying to look at alternative ways to certify teachers to get them into the classroom. Another big issue that we've been dealing with for a few years, but it seems to have hit the epicenter of it right now, is social media. How are we addressing social media? I think that cell phones and devices are here to stay. So we have to figure out, how can we make those devices effective in the classroom? And I don't know how far away we are from, the devices interfacing it more intimately with, either through eyewear or chips. I think since Moore's law has been cracked, innovation is just spiraled, and so we have to, as a public school district, get out in front and innovate ourselves. I wonder, another thing that I think is a problem in public education is, to be honest, we've been operating under the same model for the last 120 years, and society's changed, and the world is changing, and I think we need to look at what are ways can we innovate in our classrooms, and what are the ways can we support our teachers. As education hasn't changed, neither has teacher prep programs. And I'm not positive our teachers are coming out of the university really prepared. And so how do we support them? That's another aspect to that teacher shortage issue. So, that touches on a few, but I see those as being some of the major ones that are occurring and that we need to address head on.
Absolutely, I agree with that, and thank you for that. Mrs. Giovanelli?
Okay, you've got two more. What is it about the position that makes you want to make a change at this time in your professional career? Please be specific.
Yes, ma'am. So one thing you always get with me is you always get authenticity. So I'll give it to you straight. I'm at a point in my career where I can walk out of this state and work for 6 to 10 more years, pull my state retirement here, and so financial. And I've also, growing up in a kid in working class poverty, I manage my money very well, and financially, I'm in a position where I want to look for an opportunity to make a greater difference. I have a young son; he's 8 years old, and I have a daughter, 12. And of course, I love them more than anything in the world, and I want to put them in a place where they can be successful. And because my daughter is in grade 7, I have a little bit of a window before she hits high school. So now is the time. Now is the time for me to look. I was very selective in where I applied, and so I am ready to take this next step in my career. I feel like I've spent the last 10 years after I finished my doctorate digging into the science of leadership and business. I've read a lot, and then I've taken the things that I've paid attention to and I've applied them, and I've been successful. I've been successful in my last 2 jobs. I humbly say that. I would implore you guys to call and ask, because I think people will tell you that. I've been successful, and I know I can be successful at the next level. I also believe in a different type of leadership. I believe in big leadership mindsets. I believe in empowerment. I believe in integrity, ownership. I think that my style of leadership, people have gravitated to over the last six years that I've been implementing these mindsets that I believe in. And I've seen a lot of positivity out to people I've been lucky enough to lead, the teams I've been lucky enough to lead. And I think this is a perfect time for me to take on an opportunity like the schools of Lee County. I think it's a perfect fit for me. We got to go on vacation a few times when I was a kid, and I've been to South Florida, and I love South Florida. So it obviously was, when I saw it, it was very enticing. I started to research the district. It has a lot of the things that I'm looking for in a school district that I would love to be a part of and lead. And I'm at that point in my career where, I got 9, 10 years left, maybe more, 12. I haven't even thought about when I retire. But where I'm at in the state retirement, this is an opportunity for me to leave Arizona and still collect that retirement. So financially, it was the right time. That my children's age is the right time, but also in my heart, it's the right time for me to have a bigger opportunity and to be able to lead and bring more belonging and a better self and just better environments for people that work in school districts. And I feel like that's the work I've done the last few years, and I know I can scale that work. And so I'm ready. This is the opportunity in my life. This window is open. So that's why I'm applying. And I'm just excited to be here and glad to have the opportunity to share it all with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now we're coming to the conclusion, and I will turn this back over to Ms. Fisher. This is her meeting. So I guess the final question would be, what, if any, questions that you may have of the board, and then, of course, your closing statement. And Ms. Fisher?
Yes, thank you. Do you have any questions for us at this time?
No, I don't have any questions. I appreciate the questions. I think it was, I thought you guys were able to see into me, into my heart, into my brain a little bit. So I appreciate that. So I don't have any questions for you guys. I know the timeline. The search firm told me the timeline, so I know what the window is when I'll hear if I get the opportunity to fly in there and see everybody and meet more stakeholders and whatever that has, I'm up for. So no, thank you.
Then we'll look forward, hopefully, to meeting you in person. And thank you very much for your candid and thorough answers. And then at this time, I guess this concludes the interview.
Let's see what's
and
a closing.
did you want to have a closing statement?
I would, please. I don't know if I'll need a lot of time. First of all, I want to thank the school board for giving me the opportunity to answer your questions and get to know me a little bit. I am ready for this. This is going to be a great challenge. It's not something that I would take lightly. I've done quite a bit of research on Lee County. I'm very excited for the opportunity. I will share with you guys that I have a level of resiliency that I won't fail. I work hard. I believe in building a strong team. We'll build a strong team. I'll work incredibly hard, and if given this opportunity, I will not let the board down, and I will not let the students down, and I will not let the parents and the community members of Lee County down. So thank you for your opportunity. I'm looking forward to hearing from you.
Yes, and thank you. And you will be hearing from us. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So then at this time, yeah, we'll say goodbye and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Now, board members.
Thank you, Ms. Roman.
Okay, so now we'll have a break until
What?
5:25, and we'll come back to interview semi-finalist candidate Christopher Bernay at 5:30.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, today is Tuesday, January 18th, and the time is 5:30. We're reconvening the briefing meeting of today for the second School District of Lee County Superintendent of Schools candidate interview with Christopher Bernier. Welcome, Dr. Bernier.
Can't hear.
So I'll turn it over to Debbie Jordan, our board chair, for introductions.
He just said something and we
Dr.
didn't hear
Bernier,
him.
can you speak one more time, please? Because I don't think we heard you. I know we didn't hear you.
No,
Nope.
Oh, no, you are, I see that you are,
muted.
You now.
you're muted, yes.
Yes, we can hear you now. Perfect.
Okay.
Okay. Well, thank you and good evening. My name is Debbie Jordan, and I'm the board chair, and I also represent District 4. I'd like to introduce the other board members. We have Miss Mary Fisher, District 1, Miss Giovanelli, District 2, Miss Chris Patrica, District 3, Miss Gwinnetta Gittins, District 5, Miss Betsy Vaughn, District 6, and Miss Kathleen Morgan, who is District 7. Also on the dais with us, we also have our school board attorney, Ms. Dupree Bruno, and our two assistants over there, Ms. Roman and Ms. Thomas. And welcome. The board is pleased to have you as one of the top candidates for the superintendency of the school district of Lee County. We will begin to have a Q&A. We have approximately an hour and a half for this to take place. Each member will be asking questions. We will have approximately 3 to 5 minutes for a respond. In the beginning, we will have an opening statement, if you'd like, which would be approximately 5 minutes. And then at the end, we would then ask you if there's any questions that you may have of us, and a closing statement, and I would return that back to Ms. Fisher at the end. So I welcome you, and please begin with your opening statement.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation to participate in this process. You truly have an amazing school district. Having been a native of Florida for more than 30 years was an opportunity of a lifetime when I saw the job advertised. I don't want to go any further, though, without recognizing the weather events that went on over the weekend, and make sure that you, your families, your extended families, and the students of the school district are also in good stead. I know that sometimes national news can blow some things out of proportion, but it seemed extremely serious. And just wanted to, our hearts and thoughts and prayers are with you and the community at this time, because I know how devastating those natural events can be within a community and certainly within the state of Florida.
Thank you for that. We really appreciate it.
So just quickly, briefly about me, you have a lot of information about me, both from the search consultant and the materials that I provided and they provided. So I would tell you some little things about me that your human resources people probably don't want you to know. I'm the youngest of 5 children, raised by a single mom and 3 sisters. So I apologize for the heading of my cover letter. It's that dear gentleman. I make no excuses. I could, but I know growing up in a female household, that would not work. So I will just leave it at that. I appreciate the opportunity to be here despite my error on that document. I am a father. I am a partner to a wonderful woman who we now have 5 children of ours, 2 of mine biologically, 3 of hers. Her 3 girls are married. We have 3 grandchildren. We are just amazingly gifted in terms of the young people that we have been fortunate to raise. And I find myself looking and wanting to be a community member back in Florida, to be a viable partner with you and the community to move things forward. I will tell you that the most important thing for you to know about me is the passion that I bring to the job. My personality will hopefully come out throughout the interview. I am not as great about Zoom as seeing people face to face and seeing their eyes and being able to interact. You won't get anyone with a better work ethic or a creative or a focus on the work. When you get Christopher Bernier like Dr. Jenkins before you and Dr. Jar here in Clark County, you get someone who commits to what Lee County's goals and standards are and will be. The values that I have, I'm always about students first. I believe this is a people business. Nothing gets done unless you're working through and with people. So I'm a relationship person. I hope to explore that later in a question. I am the type of individual who's a hands-on servant leader. I believe that you can't do the work from a perch. You have to get on the ground and be with the people who are doing the work in order to fully understand what's transpiring. I did hear in one of the board meetings, you were aware of my exceeding expectation statement, which is really about a drive for excellence. If excellence is the standard, then you have to try to exceed expectation to get that. And I would share with the board before we get started that the one aspect of me that's non-negotiable is my integrity. And that leads to a great fiscal steward of public tax dollars and someone who understands board policy, board procedure, and the rules of the game. So look forward to your questioning. Looking forward to the opportunity to explore me a little bit more. And thank you again for the opportunity, and good to hear that the community is as safe as it can be right now.
Thank you, and we're going to begin this evening with Ms. Fisher. Ms. Fisher?
Yes. Good evening, Dr. Bernier. During the first year, how might you go about determining the strengths and weaknesses or needs of our school district? And what specific steps would you take?
Sorry, I'm just making sure I write down the question. I would take the approach within Lee County that I've taken.
I apologize. We had some issues earlier, and
That sounds better.
Mr.
Can
Gil-
you hear me now?
are we okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Is there any way to put a mic anywhere near where this is coming out so that it can be heard better? It's really difficult to hear the candidate responses.
So the only thing I could say about that, Ms. Gittens, is that if there's a concern about feedback, if we have 2 microphones close to each other. So that's why we didn't do that. In the back, they've been playing with the volume, with the house, with the mics, everything that they could do to raise the volume as much as possible. But putting another mic will be difficult, and it would defeat what you're asking.
After this is recorded, will they be able to adjust
Yes.
the volume
Yes,
when
they
it's
can.
out for the public?
Yes. Thank you, Ms. Fisher.
Yes. Please proceed.
Thank you very much. So I'll go back to the question again, if I heard it correctly. During my first year, how would I figure out the strengths and weaknesses
Dr.
of the
Bernier?
Lee County School District?
Doctor, they asked if you could just hold on for 1 minute, please. I am terribly sorry. They're having some kind of connection with the Zoom with you, so I do apologize that we are
So then what we're going
going through this again.
It's okay. Modern technology and COVID has taught us a lot.
Yes.
So
And the
then,
team has worked very hard to try to make this happen so everybody could Zoom in. They've been working for days on this.
so the question that's not on the list is, what would you do about technology in Lee County School District?
Okay. Sorry about that, Dr. Bernier. Go ahead and proceed with your answer.
Okay, so during my first year, my focus would be on learning. First of all, listening, learning, and then leading. I've used that phrase when I came here to Clark County. As you can imagine, after a 30-plus year veteran of Orange County Public Schools, if there was anything going on in any way, shape, or form, or a board member had a question, I either knew the answer or knew exactly who to call. When you move to a new school district, especially one as large as 320,000 students and 42,000 employees, and your only personal knowledge of any individual is the superintendent, you have to do a couple of things before you can move forward with any type of leadership plan. And I think that is understanding what the strengths and the weaknesses are of the Lee County School District. I think that if you listen and you ask the right questions, that'll inform your ability to learn. I always remind my mother's phrase of we have one mouth and two ears. So we have to be reminded to listen more than we speak. And I try to always listen with and then think about what the end in mind is, a Covey principle. And only then, once the listening and learning are completed, are you then able to put forth, in collaboration with the community, the school board, the staff, and the extended internal and external stakeholders, only then are you able to put forward a path of leading. I think important in that process is a transition team. I think there needs to be an advisory group for the superintendent that I would ask board members to participate in by selecting a member from each of their districts. I'd like to have elected school district and school leaders, as well as teachers and staff and community organizations as well. The goal of this would be to inform the superintendent and provide an environment to discuss those strengths and weaknesses, as well as try to create an effective and collaborative process to align the school district moving forward. I would like to have a separate group because sometimes I think they are intimidated by adults and speak with the students. I think having student voice to inform decisions is incredibly important. So really what I'm talking about is a collaborative community engagement process, part of internal and external stakeholders, using formal and informal settings. I've already done a little bit of research on your strengths and weaknesses. Last time that I was in a superintendent search, I had a great conversation with my checkout clerk at the grocery store. That's what I mean by an informal conversation. But there have been individuals that I know who work in Lee County or work around or have raised parents through the system, and they have been extremely supportive in helping me with kind of three questions. And this is what I would start as a process when I engaged with the community groups. What's working in Lee County, and how do we know? What isn't working, and do we know why? And is it a replacement? Do we need to change it, or is it a tweak? Because hasn't being done with fidelity. And then I don't know if this will translate via Zoom with only being able to look at one board member at a time, but what are the sacred cows? What are the landmines that a superintendent, a new leader to an organization should be wary of? I mentioned I was the youngest of 5 children. I was blessed to have my brothers and sisters step upon the landmines of my parents' rules. It made it very easy for me to navigate the world that was my home and my family's rules because I had very clear examples. There are expert leaders in this school district who know where those sacred situations and those landmines are. And it's important to have that. My final question I ask everybody when I have these types of roundtables is what keeps you up at night? Because parents will give you a very different answer than students, board members different than community organization, and organizations different than electeds. Again, to clarify, that advisory team would be a separate committee from the community engagement process so that I could bring back the information to a safe environment where I could get information and then share with board members one-on-one, as well as in weekly meetings and in school board meetings as we move forward and develop the process for moving Lee County even further forward together.
Well, that's a well thought out and excellent answer. Thank you for that. At this time, I'll pass you on to Mrs. Giovanelli, our District 2 representative.
Hello. Thank you.
Hi.
How would you build a good working relationship between the board and the superintendent? Please cite examples. Or as a superintendent, really?
Any type of relationship with a school board and a superintendent begins with communication. Then you have to say it again. Literally, I'm going to say it, communication. And then you have to say it again, communication. All of that is about building trust and transparency. I know that I'm about potentially to inherit a wonderful team that's done great work in Lee County. You have, as a collective board, moved the needle on student achievement. You've moved the needle for change, your bond referendum. You have built reserves. You are invested wisely. You've done amazing work. But anytime a team member changes, there is a process that every team goes through. And that is they must form. And they must form around common definitions of communication, trust, transparency, relationship. They have to understand each other, and that would be my initial process. I would do that by building trust. And when I say build trust, I want to make sure that this is clear both to you and the community. The trust is a bank account. I used to do this with my middle school and high school students. Trust is something that you have to make deposits in long before you can make a withdrawal. But I believe it's also a two-way street. In the classroom, I believe teachers have to deposit into trust accounts with their students. And once that level of trust is built, we can make withdrawals, we can make errors or mistakes. But we have to be very careful in the beginning that we're communicating clearly, gathering the right information, talking about little details, because the devil will be in the little details. I would like to establish initial meetings with the Board of Trustees. If I interchange, that's what my school board is called, so I apologize. With the school board, I'd like to gain your perspective, both to the last question on strengths and weaknesses, but I'd also like to know what your desires are regarding the outcomes of Lee County schools. You all represent very different populations and very different aspects of the community. I'd also like to discuss with each of you what you mean and what your preferences are for communication. I have a friend who describes a superintendency as having 7 different dance partners. Some of you will like to waltz. Some of you will like to jitterbug. Some of you will have a different type of dance step where I must adjust to your communication style in order to make that work. I'd also like to establish every 2 weeks a meeting with individual board members so that we could sit in your office or mine, provide the same information to each one of you from the superintendent, and have some discussions about where we're headed as a school district. I'd like to establish those same meetings with the chair and the other elected officers to discuss agenda review process and making sure that we're bringing a clear understanding of the agenda to the board meetings each week. Additionally, I think it's important to establish a cadence of weekly and monthly communications, both formal and informal, in order to ensure that those communications are there. For instance, here in Clark, I was responsible for starting something called the Board Bulletin. That's where each one of the major divisions reports out to the board in written form, worked on by our communications department, to provide monthly updates of not only what we've done, where we're going, but where the future lies in the work that lies ahead. If warranted, I'd like to work with the board to see whether board work sessions could be available for us to discuss governance, to discuss superintendent evaluation, to talk about goals and outcomes in a transparent manner so that the community can hear what we have to say.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chris Patrica here. I'm sorry, hi. Your question is...
I'm sorry, I'm leaning forward to hear my phone.
Okay.
I don't know, I have this vision of me being on a big screen and me hovering over all. Sorry.
Your question is to please describe a time or a setting where inequity and implied bias came to light, and from your position, how you addressed it, and what were the individual and/or organizational outcomes, please.
I heard most of it. I just want to make sure that I'm on the right. You wanted to know about a time where I saw inequity or bias and how I reacted to it and intervened?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I've been doing that work for a long period of time. You go back to Orange County Public Schools, where we worked specifically on our discipline procedures, our code of conduct, how we responded to disciplinary infractions. From 2010 to 2014, Dr. Jenkins had put me in charge of revitalizing the approach to student discipline. Clearly, inequity and bias were really very apparent in the disproportionality of males, African-American males and Hispanic males who were being suspended and expelled from school. I have worked through that process to develop alternative to suspension centers in conjunction with county and city government, as well as the faith-based community, which gave students and families an opportunity that when or if a student had to be separated for a period of time from their school, they had a safe place with which to conduct their homework, have a certified teacher and a paraprofessional to help support their work so that mom and dad could go off to work and continue to support the family while the student continued their responsibilities in the classroom while not being present. I also work very hard here, and I'm going to save this example because I'm assuming I want to save my best example, but I work very hard with gifted education and universal screening here. But the idea that first came to mind goes back a ways. It goes back to my first principalship. I had, doing my research like I've done for all of you, I had come across the school improvement plan with the school advisory council. And I was disturbed by something that I read within the school improvement plan, but it never came up in my interview. When I was appointed principal, I spoke with my region leadership, and they offered me the opportunity to go through the school improvement plan and see if I had anything that was concerned. What concerned me was the plan specifically identified 145 students, mostly Hispanic and African American males, who were going to be put in a student discipline team that was going to be housed in the old agricultural building on a school building and in dilapidated portables. They were going to be wearing, I swear I'm not making this up, they were going to be wearing red shirts so they could be identifiable. They were not permitted to go to the cafeteria. They were going to have to receive cold lunches delivered to them via the cafeteria staff. The goal was for these students to earn their way back to the general population. Those instances and those rules violate everything I know about how you're supposed to treat children. And it wouldn't matter to me whether black, brown, white, male, female. Those are not ways young people should come to middle school. So I knew I had a difficult situation ahead, but I received permission from my regional superintendent to go ahead and begin to tackle the problem. Since it was embedded in the school advisory council plan, my first opportunity, who was on the interview committee, was to meet with my then chair of the school advisory council. We had a long discussion about the practice and what was planned. He shared all of his reservations, but he felt with the former principal that he did not have a way or means to speak up. So that gave us an opportunity to ground level and ground set early on about how I wanted my parents to interact with me and work with our school. So in collaboration with the school advisory council and with their permission, I began to meet with the impacted teachers. First thing out of their mind, as you can imagine, was they were going to be out of a job. They thought, if this program goes away, I'm not going to have a job. I assured them that we would still have 145 students on campus that still needed educators, that we would blend those students into the environment that they belonged in, and we would add additional resources through our guidance counselors, and at the time we had something called a SAFE coordinator, Student Assistance and Family Empowerment, to help track those young people and help support them with the choices they were making, which were leading to consequences and other issues. We had some work to do with the entire faculty because, as you can imagine, some of the faculty was very excited about these 145 not being in their classrooms. But I knew in my heart and soul what the right thing was to do by children. And if you're going to have inequities, like setting children aside, making them visible as to their issue or their reason for selection, and then not treat them fairly, I can only imagine what would have resulted from that. I will jump in case that doesn't get there. This is just one of the issues I tackled when I became the principal at a Title I, almost F school building. It was 1 point away from an F. That was my first principalship. When I left, we were C, as in Charlie, C graded. We were fully inclusive. And some of these teachers were impacted, became my new leaders. They became the new group that really drove the continuing improvement process of the school. So while I've done work in lots of other ways, that is one that, and I don't have it anymore, but that's one of the things that curled my hair.
Very good, thank you.
Oh, goodness. Thank you. The next question is, please share a time when a plan or major object did not turn out successfully and describe what you did to change that effort and how was the situation improved?
I know I'm supposed to be talking about a situation that I planned and turned out. I didn't hear the next word. Did it turn out well or did it turn out poorly?
Okay, please share a time when a plan or major object did not turn out successfully. And objective, I'm sorry, I'm confusing you. Or a major objective did not turn out successfully, and describe what you did to change that effort and how was that situation improved?
I have to be careful with this example, so somebody needs to give me like a time signal, because this one may go, if I'm not careful, it might go long.
I will give you that. And we all see you. You may only see one, but we all see you.
Okay.
So go ahead.
I would have to use a building program that the board and superintendent had devised in Orange County Public Schools, creating K-8 centers in the inner city of Orlando. The goal was to revitalize and collapse some of our smaller elementaries, rebuild some of them as K-8s, and to provide this new great environment for people within the inner core. As you can imagine, that's a very exciting opportunity at the very beginning, but people very quickly realized in two very historical buildings in my former community, Howard Middle School and oh boy, I was going to name it and I just forgot it. And one of our elementary schools, Hillcrest Elementary School, those families had purchased in that area specifically because of those historical school buildings. They loved Hillcrest. They loved being able to walk to downtown, walk their children to school, walk their children to middle school. And these K-8s were changing their environment. Their former attendance zone was going away. And these two school buildings had been attached with something we referred to in Orange County as the first zoneless magnets, meaning they were going to be by application only. And I don't think at the beginning of the process, because one of the responsibilities I had was student enrollment and working through the construction process as buildings were adjusted and fixed and revamped and built, I don't think at the beginning of the process the community quite understood it. But as time came along, between community members, the mayor, the county mayor, real estate agents, community groups, it became very clear to our board members that we need to do something to try to preserve Howard and Hillcrest elementary zones. Another one of my responsibilities at the time was the magnet office. So using Magnet Schools of America, I'll give them due credit, and doing a lot of research on our own. As well, at the time, I had student enrollment policy, so I understood grandfathering, sibling transfer. We devised a way for those parents to have equitable opportunity to join the magnets. We even created something we called a zone preference. So not only would a parent applying for kindergarten at the elementary or sixth grade at the middle school have an opportunity to get in the regular lottery process, but in a sense, they were offered a second lottery ticket based upon geographic preference from the former zone. It turned out to be very successful. Both those programs are now, the K-8s went off, they were fully enrolled, they had enough enrollment to make that aspect, as you know, work, because enrollment's pretty critical in a new school building, but also the magnet programs took off as well. And they are both nationally recognized this time as Magnet Schools of America School of Choice programs.
Great, thank you. And you did that in record-breaking time.
A lot more detail. I'm learning to be brief.
Thank you so much. And Ms. Gittens is next, please.
And I have just one really quick follow-up on that. So you said the K through 8s went away and it just became magnet, am I correct?
What we want, I'm not sure I understood the question completely, so let me just give a short answer and see whether that that covers it. What we did was we continued with the K-8 project, but found a way for the young people who are already enrolled in the school to stay. We only recruited the youngest class, so we populated the zoneless magnet from kindergarten or 6th grade up through the 8th grade. And we used sibling transfer, so if they had an older brother and sister, they were automatically in. We used grandfathering in order to keep the older students in place. And then we created the geographic preference, which allowed parents who didn't have those other two options to still have an opportunity to join in the kindergarten or 6th grade where we were doing our recruitment.
Thank you so much for clarifying that, because it was a good point. I wanted to make sure I had it right. Good afternoon, and my question is, America is facing a vast teacher shortage. What strategies would you put in place to combat that crisis?
Yes, you are correct. I will give
Go
you just a quick
figure.
answer to say we have paused the last 2 days, the Friday before the Martin Luther King holiday, and we paused again today. We flipped our calendar with a staff development day and a snow day. Believe it or not, you can occasionally need a snow day in Vegas. And we extended our weekend by 2 days because staffing-wise, we were up against this new COVID strain, and we needed a bit of a breather for our people and our children to go home. So I get teacher vacancies very well. I will tell you, our HR department always likes to say they're 95% staffed. In Clark County, that means 950 classrooms are going without a certified teacher. So we try to balance the 95% with the real figure. I'm trying to tell you that so you can understand a little bit about my desire to be transparent. Not me, I promise.
It's not me either, so.
It happens,
so
it
I
happens
just-
every once in a while, sorry about that.
So I just want to make sure that I heard that. So you said that when it's 95% staff, that it's, how many classes are vacant?
950.
Oh, geez.
So
Okay.
I understand the teacher shortage, but I think before I go into what we can do to attract teachers, I think one of the times we skip over what we need to do in order to retain them. And I think retention is a huge piece. I think retention of staff clearly is the first critical component. You need to have programs and things in place that allow teachers to grow without them having to actually leave the classroom. So there needs to be a career path for teachers that doesn't necessarily lead to administration. I think you have to have positive work environments. I think you need to have potentially some retention bonus programs. I think also that you need to have competitive compensation. I don't think you have to have the best. But I will tell you that in Orange County Public Schools, when we made retention a factor, and that goes back long ago, we had about an 8% gain in retention by just making it a factor that was discussed as a principal supervisor with principals during their annual evaluation. They were not directly evaluated on it, but it was part of the conversation. Why did Ms. Gittens leave? Why did Chris Bernier stay? Well, Ms. Gittens' husband was transferred to Iowa, so she had to go. Ms. Jones, where did she? Well, she didn't like me. Oh, well, what do you think that was about? So I think the first step to really retaining and dealing with the teacher crisis is about excellent school environments, and I will put pressure on myself and the other leaders. People stay in school buildings because of leaders. When I opened Odyssey Middle School as a second year, well, not a second year, my second principalship, and I reached out across the county to say, hey, I'm opening a brand new school. I had a plethora of people that wanted to work at Odyssey. They didn't necessarily like the drive because we were way out on the outskirts of town, as you can imagine how schools grow. But they wanted to work for Chris Bernier. And they knew what they were going to get in their leader, and they knew how they were going to be supported. So before we get into I'll move to the plans for retention now, but I think we have to find a way to retain our people. I think it's incredibly important. And I think it starts with leadership and school environment. Because if a person works for a great leader, they're going to stay with him or her. And I think that's an important factor. I think one of the things you have to use is data. I think you have to know what your retirement scheme looks like 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road. How many people are going to be aging out of the system? Because you may or may not be able to retain them After 30, 35, 39, 40 years, I think a person has a right to retire. And if that's what they choose to do, they do. But having a glimpse of what's coming allows you to plan. I think with that planning, you have to get into your university systems. You have to have a presence at national and regional conferences. And you need to be armed with something called a district-wide contract. We are going to have vacancies next year. This is a contract that will allow you to work within Lee County. We will find you a position. If you sign on the dotted line, here's a small signing bonus, and you will have a position. How can I get you information about rentals and apartments and everything else that you need to know, or housing if you're moving your entire family? I think the other places we have to lock down our student interns. Florida Gulf Coast University must provide quality interns to our school system. And with that, we have to be able to lock those individuals down during their senior teach. We can't wait for them to finish the senior teach, go back to their university, be recruited by somebody else. Again, district-wide contacts can help. I think you also can use, and we were on this when I left Orange, and I don't know how it completely turned out, but with the advent and the expansion of UCF into the downtown center, we were using them with our educational magnet to draw students into the education field. And if they gave us 4 years, working with the university about tuition waivers. So, because I know if I can keep a teacher in my school building for 4 to 5 years, I can keep them. If I lose them in 1, 2, or 3, the likelihood of them coming back to the education field is pretty small. So long term, I think you have to have a process that's attractive to young people. I think you have to have a process that creates environments that hold on to your more experienced teachers. And I think you have to come up with some incentives like we did just recently. We just provided 2 performance bonuses. One was paid in January to everyone except the cabinet level people for coming back after the winter holidays. We thought it was really important to acknowledge the work that's gone in. And then if they're still here in that last week of May before we close, they'll receive another incentive bonus. And that applies to the administrators, the teachers unions, our classified or support professionals, our bus drivers. It's just a way of saying thank you. And it's one-time, non-recurring funds. So it doesn't something that impacts the large budgetary issues of a school district of your size. So those are just some of my ideas related to teacher retention and the teacher crisis.
Okay, thank you so much. Next is Ms. Vaughn.
Hi, Betsy Vaughn here. If there were a conflict between different community groups in the district over a particular issue, how would you resolve it? And please cite examples that you've used.
I think there are 2 issues that I've used here in CCSD recently. One is ESSER 3. ESSER 3 dollars equate to about $790 million in Clark County. I know that's an extraordinary number, but I suggest whenever I say that out loud, everyone do the math. Divide it by 320,000 students, and you'll see we didn't get any more than anybody else did. But when you have that type of money flowing into a school district that quite honestly has not built its trust and transparency, the community was very skeptical of how those things would work. We utilized a process to involve the community. We brought in outside people to help us develop the system and the plan. We then engaged community groups to tell us what the priority spend should be. Those priority groups then turned in their information by holding their own meetings. The CCSD employees could be invited, but we weren't required to be there. We then put together a council representative of all of our 7 board members for the people who would review all of the information from the almost 7,000 community groups that responded. They came up with themes, and then we began the hard work of integrating it into our process. We then utilized, once we built the prioritized spending areas around our strategic plan, we then went out to the community in a survey. And the interesting thing, and I really wish I had planned this, it did not work out. I wish I had said I planned it, but I want to make sure it's clear. We had about 35,000 respondents, self-identifying primarily as employees or parents. But the interesting thing about the 35,000 was they had not participated in a community group. So in a sense, they became a check and balance against the work of the community groups and the work of the committee that then determined the common themes. And while I think one of the ways that I measure the success of engaging with the community and a community as wide as Clark, 6,000 square miles, is the word we get at the podium from either public speakers or specifically people who are commenting on the item. While there was some conversation about we need $100,000 more here, or we need additional money there, the general response was how positive the process was, how very engaged communities and community organizations had a chance to respond, and that at the very end, they felt listened to, and they felt the program moving forward aligned with what they thought their expectations should be. The other one that was real quick, and I'll be quicker with this one, is I had the wonderful opportunity just recently to be responsible for redrawing my trustees' election zones. Those are not done in the state of Nevada by the elections office. They're done by CCSD staff. Nothing better than redesigning election lines for your boss's 7 bosses. It's an experience. But I took my demographer and my government relations team, and we went on a seven journey meeting ride where we used the same identical process, looking at 3 potential maps. We garnered amazing feedback privately in a very difficult setting. You have to really want to listen to people, and you have to give them the opportunity to provide the feedback, and then you have to be transparent that you listen to them. So we used a very specific process to provide them detailed notes by within 24 hours of what we'd heard. We then, when we were done with the 7 meetings, we came back to the board. We said, this is what we heard. Some of our partners in the process in the community came and spoke, and the board directed us to use the information and develop 2 additional maps. I'll fast forward. There was more community engagement, but again, I go to the board meeting. By the time we were presented with the board meeting, we had 5 speakers. All of them spoke extremely highly of the demographer, of the process, and of maps 4 and 5. And while they may have had a personal preference 4 over 5 or 5 over 4, they were happy with both. The board passed it 6-1, and we had redesigned our trustee districts. That's not easy work to do, because when you line up constituents who have a vested interest in their trustee being reelected, it creates a very dynamic situation. And it's from experience in professional development and other places, as well as being a school building leader, where you learn how to facilitate a group like that and bring it to a positive conclusion.
Thank you.
Dr. Bernier, what has been your success as a school leader in partnering with higher education and the business community? Please mention the partnerships that have developed as a result of your leadership.
Well, in higher education, I would mention 2 universities. I would mention University of Central Florida, which clearly is the largest university in the Central Florida area. But we also work very closely with Stetson University as well. They provided everything from, like I said, the beginnings of helping to support our teaching magnets and providing our young people opportunities to begin to access college curriculum in their junior and senior years so they could be better prepared to step into the collegiate environment and prepare as an educator. They were working with us in terms of some tuition deferral, or even the possibility of removing the tuition requirement upon 4 or 5 years of excellent service as a teacher. Stetson and UCF also provide us a great opportunity for what I refer to as program evaluation. Sometimes you need somebody from the outside to come in with their doctorate, with their understanding of how programs need to be measured, and utilize those individuals to help put an independent process to a project or program or event so that you can find out what's working, what isn't, whether that is still a good use of tax dollars, are we getting the return on investment we need, or do we need to change it, or is it a matter of fidelity, which means we need to invest in it more so our teachers are better prepared to implement it. So those are my university partnerships. I have been involved with UNLV slightly here in leadership development. I am working with them right now in with the Aldrin Foundation regarding STEM education. So those partnerships are yet to be determined, but I wanted you to be aware that that work continues here with the largest university here in town. I think the other area, and one I'm probably have better examples of, is with business. I had two great opportunities to start magnet programs, one with Northrop Grumman in laser photonics. That actually started at a conversation at a Chamber of Commerce meeting with an executive at Northrop Grumman who was discussing with me the need for employees to get involved with laser photonics, but the struggle because they have to be U.S. citizens. And I said, well, I've got, 209,000 kids. Some of them should be able to handle the mathematics and the work. And we began the process of building a magnet program at Wekiva High School so that students could not only graduate with the necessary math skills, but with employment at Embry-Riddle. Worked with Junior Achievement to start the first entrepreneurial magnet in the United States. It since has been replicated, and they've since turned over their responsibility to a partner company. But I was really proud of the work that we did at Oak Ridge High School to bring in an entrepreneurial program into an inner city school that really needed a way to attract additional children. I think the others are more in the alternative ed center. I worked with Goodwill Industries to create school to work programs for our children so that they could be at school during the day and work at the same time, sort of an AM PM shift, AM work, PM school, PM work, AM school. We built the same program at Universal Studios as well. Universal Studios is a flagship. It is an amazing school to work program. And when I left, we were moving beyond the hourly employee butterbeer parking attendant line guide to internships in the executive offices in marketing, vice president of research. And it really became an opportunity for our seniors to grow. The caveat with that program was when everybody was off on vacation, those children were working. So their winter holidays, their Thanksgiving holidays, their spring break, they were part of the work schedule. But I don't know if I'll get a chance to explain it, so I'll say it. During that same period of time in alternative ed, we raised our graduation rate in Orange County to over 90%. Our traditionals went up 9, but the alternative ed populations, in conjunction with working with the high schools, we went up 12% during that period of time. And I really credit those business opportunities and those business leaders for allowing our students a unique opportunity and one that met their learning needs.
Wonderful, thank you. Ms. Fisher.
Yes, thank you. As superintendent, Dr. Bernier, what would your role be in the budgetary process? Please specify. I
I'm going to
thought
have
you'd
to look
like
at a
that
couple
one.
of notes because I'm so happy. I took your board policies away with me, and I took your last financial audit report away with me, and I've been working on them. So I know about 1.04, 6.02, and 6.05. 1.04 talks about what my responsibilities are for all of you, everything from engaging and making sure that the public understands and the employees understand the budget, all the way through to making sure it's aligned to your strategic objectives and really building an opportunity to make sure that the direct resources are spent on student need. 6.02 is really big, but it really speaks to some of the same things about spending the money correctly, making sure that it's focused on student achievement, school safety, that it allows for district operations to continue, and maximizes what I love about it, and this is the first time I knew it. I smiled. It expects a maximization of the money to move to the school-based level. And there are so many districts that don't have that in writing. They say it, but when push comes to shove, they don't necessarily do it. So I think the last one, 6.08, if I have the number correct, is the investment of funds. So we have a responsibility with the CFO to work with you as a board and make sure that we are properly investing the funds so we could have a reasonable rate of return. So that was a nice place to dig in, and that led to me going back and reviewing my educational leadership, both as my master's program and at the University of Central Florida. My doctoral program is how the budget cycle works within Florida school systems. As you well know, there's a preliminary budget released in June. The fiscal year begins in July. Early July, we approve a temporary, in my mind, a temporary final budget because there's a second hearing, usually in September. That sort of quantifies the money. Then we have October FTE. Then the process moves to, in December, we begin to turn in student counts and what our district enrollment will be. Then the legislature gets to play with it for a long period of time, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere from January, maybe through April and May, depending on how long the session goes. But in the meantime, what your budget department develops is a draft budget. They get the budgets out to the school buildings based upon DRA. They get the information to the principals so that they and their school advisory teams and their staff can make decisions about the following year based upon their expected student enrollments. And the cycle continues. I say all that to say this. This is an opportunity for us to consistently engage in a conversation about where we are strategically with budget, where we are strategically with how we're moving the needle on student achievement. It gives us an opportunity multiple times during the school year to have a conversation about maybe some cost overruns, for instance, and I don't mean in any way, shape, or form. Sometimes diesel fuel goes up, and so cost for buses need to be adjusted. And the CFO and myself would need to come and have a conversation with you. Other opportunities, like recently here in the state of Nevada, we got an opportunity to buy 3 electric buses under a state grant. So 3 of the buses we thought we were going to have to replace, we didn't need to. So the operations, myself, chief of staff, and our CFO got together. We made some adjustments to the budget, went to the superintendent, and presented it back to the board. I think I started the whole thing about board relations with communication. My job as the superintendent is to work with the CFO and the other chiefs, make sure that we're being accountable to the board policies that I mentioned, making sure that we're financing schools as the maximized priority, then dealing with budgets. I'm used to that, being both a school leader where I loved my budget and a district leader when I thought, wow, I don't really think I have enough money to get everything I need to get done. But I agreed that the schools, and I still agree that the schools deserve the yeoman's piece of the funding because that's where our children are. And that's a huge piece. I think the other piece is to continue always with the chiefs to look for operational efficiencies, always look for opportunities to find a chance to demonstrate to this community that we're fiscally responsible with their dollars and that we're above reproach. I think that's an issue that I think sometimes school boards and superintendents deal with. Sometimes people feel like there's some deals going on, and we have to find a way to be transparent so that people understand and are clear about why we're making the decisions we're making. So often I think sometimes we don't share the why. We tell them the how and the what, but we don't always get an opportunity to really explain the why.
Right.
That's a very generalized overview of the budget process.
It
I could
sounded
go into more
very,
detail if you wanted.
it sounded very well prepared, and you've definitely done your homework. Thank you. Mrs. Giovanelli.
Hello again. What is it about this position that makes you want to make a change at this time in your professional career? Please be specific. Thank you.
Watershed moment in an interview. I love this job. I love the idea. Always wanted to be a superintendent. I left Orange County. As you can tell, I don't move a lot of places. My Orange County resume looks like I can't hold a job, but I swear to you, all those jobs were within Orange County. And there were great opportunities to learn and to grow and to build a career. And I'm very deeply indebted to Jim Schott, who was the first person who hired me into a leadership role, and to Barbara Jenkins, who was the last person that I said goodbye to when I left Orange County Public Schools. The chance to come to Vegas was an opportunity to get closer to the superintendency, to see more of an opportunity to really get in deep with the superintendent regarding board, community, and really get into the work that has to be done with all the chiefs to keep all the things, all the parts moving so the superintendent can focus on some of the other things that he needs to focus on in a system this large. Lee represents an environment that I would like to come to. And the more research I do, the more comfortable I feel. Like I mentioned, going into the budget process and finding out that there is a school board policy that maximizes the funding to the schools. That just aligns with everything you read about Lee County. It aligns with Envision 2023 and what the expectations are. It aligns with the hard work from whether it's in teaching and learning or the academic office to operations to chief information officer to the chief of staff. There's just amazing people there doing great work. You as a board are attractive to work for. You are knowledgeable. You are smart. I'm sounding like I'm doing professional development 101 and teaching the suck-up lesson. But you are. And I've watched a lot of your board meetings. You don't always agree, but you always make, for me, you always seem to make, from what I've seen, the best decision is always in the best interest of the children you serve. And sometimes politically that's not comfortable. Sometimes that's difficult. And yet time and time again in the meetings I've watched, you've done that. Lastly, I am not a Las Vegas person. I came to grow. I saw it as an opportunity to get better. I saw it as an opportunity to learn more. And when I told my superintendent that I would come out, I told him it was a 3-year deal with an option for a 4th or 5th if that's what I wanted to do. Jesus and I met back in August and September. And I said, boss, I really want to have the opportunity. And he has been nothing but amazingly supportive. And we're in a much better place than when I came. Our cabinet's aligned. We have the right people on the bus in the right jobs. We have a chief strategy officer that we've just brought on board. And we are moving forward with a very aggressive strategic plan, an ESSER plan, to move the needle on student achievement in Clark. And he has all the right people now. And he will tell you he's done all the hiring, and he has. But there's a lot of work that goes behind the scenes to make sure he gets the right candidates. I look forward to the opportunity to have that opportunity to work with you as a school board, the community of Fort Myers, Coral Gables, the larger Lee County community, and most of all, to work with the students. It's what I do. I have a passion for educating and working with young people, and love working through administrators to accomplish that work.
Thank you. And ladies, I mixed up but I will come back to my number 9 at the end. Thank you. Number 16 for me, sorry.
Chris Patrica here. What would you do to positively impact student achievement? Please discuss in detail successful efforts to narrow or close identified achievement gaps in your current district.
In the current district, I think one of the biggest things we've done to close student achievement gaps is our work in equity and access. We have worked very, very hard in Clark County Schools with the Equity Commission to establish pain points, I will call them, in the K-12 continuum. You have been nationally recognized for your Head Start program, and if I don't get the position, I need to do even deeper research that I've learned about how you're doing that work. Because one of the pain points in CCSD for making a move on student achievement is the lack of quality pre-K environments. That's one of the places that's a pain point in order to get a student exiting the system, both college, career, and military ready. They get behind the 8 ball early. Additionally, kindergarten is not a requirement in the state of Nevada. It is on our legislative platform going into this legislative session in order to make it a requirement. We did get some work with starting them as early as age 5, depending on their birth date this year, but we could not get the legislature to move all the way because the reason was we were putting in place a new funding formula. The second pain point is in gifted. In second grade, it really provides an opportunity for students not to be exposed to the same level of rigor. So we work very hard on creating second grade universal assessment. That assessment during COVID was provided to over 12,000 second grade students. More than 8,000 took it. Our numbers in gifted were kind of scary. We had a 24% white population, but we were at 48% white and gifted. We had a 16% African-American population, but we were at 6% in terms of the number of kids in gifted. And our Hispanic numbers were at 45, and I believe our numbers within, I see where I have it. Yes. Our numbers within gifted for Hispanics was 34. So we had gaps We had huge gaps in terms of equity with the universal assessment and the removal of private assessment. We qualified over 4,000 students. The gaps now for white students is +1. We're only 1 percentage point above the total population. In African American, we closed the gap to -1, so we still have 1% to grow. And then finally, we moved the Latino or Hispanic population to within -7. Not perfect numbers, but again, incremental movement and allowing things to get better, and allowing things to continue to improve. And if we can keep on that track, then over time, those disproportionate numbers will disappear. They will graduate, and we'll have the opportunity both in second grade, and I'm working with my boss right now to say we should do fourth grade too, since we have the ESSER dollars, because that's another opportunity to attract kids into the pipeline. The last two areas are in middle school advanced coursework, which I'm really impressed you already have a strategic goal surrounding. If young people come into middle school prepared, but they can't access the right classes in middle school, then they arrive in high school without the opportunity later in their four-year academic career to get into things like AP, IB, dual enrollment, collegiate enrollment, industry certifications, et cetera. So that primarily has been the diversity work that I've done here at Clark. If you want some examples from Orange, I could provide those to you as well.
Well, that's very good. Thank you. Next up is Ms. Jordan.
And if I may interrupt, this
Yes,
is the
please.
halfway point of the interview questions, and I just want to let you know that according to the schedule, we have 15 minutes left, but we,
All right.
yeah, it was an hour and 15 minutes. So we will extend that by 15 or 20 minutes if we need to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. My question would be, what do you consider to be your major strengths as an administrator? What have you targeted for personal or professional improvements? Please.
That is an excellent question. I think I talked a little bit about my strengths when I started. I think the aspect of being a student's first person, having integrity is a non-negotiable, being a good fiscal steward of the public tax dollar, whether that was as a assistant principal, district leader, here as chief of staff. You know, I don't spend money willy-nilly. I need to know what we're spending it on, what the return on investment is going to be, how we're going to measure the outcome. I think that I am a person who builds trust and transparency by that aspect of building trust bank accounts that I mentioned earlier. I think also that I work very, very hard on my relationships with people. I have said it out loud to my boss and to my boss's bosses. I will do my job. I will come and I will bust my tail with the work ethic that was instilled in me as a child and that I have worked with since I was born. But I will walk through a wall for a relationship. And I had that both in Orange with Dr. Jenkins and I have it here with Dr. Jara. And that's something I'd want to model for the staff, that it's about wanting to do it for the kids, but also knowing that the person that you're ultimately accountable to, who holds your evaluative pen, is going to reach down, get in the trenches with you as a servant leader, help support the process, own it with you. And when things go badly, that's on me. When things go right, I will give all the accolades away because that's how you build people. So I think those are some of my strengths. I think the shot at always trying to be excellent sometimes can be a barrier. But I will share with you that I want to be clear, I'm not saying I don't have these things. But inside my journal, which every time I fill one up, I get a new one, but I move the Post-it note. There's 3 reminders in my journal on the first page on a Post-it note. And it says poised, patient, and professional. And I'm all those things. But they are a great reminder to me every day when I sit at my little coffee counter at my house, when I open my journal to see what I'm going to be doing at 5 a.m., even though it hasn't changed from when I reviewed it the night before. It's just a nice reminder to me that no matter what's going on, no matter what's transpired, no matter if we've had really great weather or a snow day or a tornado come through the community, what people want from their leader is someone who is poised, patient, and professional. I have those attributes, but it's something I think that I have to remind myself of and work on every day.
Great, thank you so much, appreciate that. Ms. Gittens?
Okay. How would you handle decisions that are unpopular with the public, but educationally necessary? And please cite actual examples.
I'm sorry, Ms. Gittens, I didn't.
Okay,
I only got pieces of it. Could you
let me
repeat it?
repeat it once more. How would you handle decisions that are unpopular with the public, but educationally necessary? And cite examples.
Oh, boy.
You wish I hadn't repeated that one, right? No.
I've already shared the experience of my suspension students, the 145 at Union Park Middle School. I will share with you that after that initial work, we worked very hard on becoming an inclusive environment with co-teaching and bringing our exceptional education students, our special ed students inside the building and making them a part of the general ed classroom where their IEPs were appropriate. Unpopular decisions are part of the process, right? In today's day and age, I'm figuring about 50% of the people are happy and 50% of the people aren't. It's a pretty divided community nationwide, but I think if you're making making decisions in the best interest of children, and again, going back to the why. So I think there's several things I try to do with a difficult decision or difficult news. I try to prepare myself. Several years ago, my father passed away. I really thought about what the conversation was going to be like for my two children. I needed to pull myself together, not to be clinical about it, but to make sure that I could get through the conversation and they would understand what happened and what was expected of them. I think with difficult decisions, you can't wait. I think the longer you wait, if a decision's been made, the more likely it is to get out, the more likely it is to get out, the more angry people get that they didn't know. I think you have to maintain respect for other people's opinion. It does not mean you have to agree with them at the end, but you have to acknowledge their resistance. Those are words that I've used, sort of like putting yourself in their shoes. You have to, as a leader, understand who's not going to be happy and their why. I think, though, at the end of being prepared and not waiting and once the decision's made, getting it out there, I think you have to set expectations for, again, why you're doing it and what the expected outcome is expected to be, and then you have to plan for that. You have to be prepared to tell people, here's how we're going to know if this decision, which we knew was going to be unpopular, here's how we're going to know in 6 months, a year and a half, I'm just using arbitrary timeframes, how we're going to know if the decisions we're making are being successful. At Odyssey Middle School, I had the opportunity to leave Odyssey as an A-rated with 99% of AYP satisfied. It's still 1% still bothers me. That's my perfectionism and my excellence that's talking again. But we had to make a decision about halfway through my tenure there to change our reading intervention program. We had invested a significant amount of money in the program, a significant amount of money in teacher training and staff, but we had squeezed that lemon and we got as much juice out of it as we could get out of it. We needed to change direction. And those are some of the things I remember talking with my staff about we have to make some decisions for the betterment of the kids. And again, it goes back to that issue. And I remember a math teacher who was with me at Union Park Middle and followed me to Odyssey, who put her arm around me at the end of the meeting, and she said, with the curriculum counselor, said, I know that was hard, but we're making the decision in the best interest of kids. And we know you'll help us through this part of the journey as well. So. It's how
Thank
I
you.
think you approach difficult decisions.
Thank you. Ms. Vaughn?
Give us some specific ideas on how you would judge your own effectiveness as a superintendent and how the board should evaluate your work.
I know there are a lot of superintendents nationwide that aren't evaluated. And evaluations here in Clark County have been difficult to come by for our superintendent. I believe there should, like in my work with my direct reports here and my work in my former life in Orange County, I believe there needs to be an initial meeting of what the expectations are, what I would like to be evaluated on. I'll give you some examples in a minute. What you would like to evaluate me on. And making them definable and measurable. I think they're going to revolve around, I hope they're going to revolve around the strategic plan, student achievement outcomes, closing of achievement gaps, graduation rate, maybe on-time percentage for buses. I'm just using, percentage of free and reduced lunch meals being served. And there's lots of metrics in a school system which a superintendent can be evaluated on. But I think in an initial one, we should agree on what the big ones are. And I would take on, I don't shy away from accountability, so I would take those on. I think fiscal responsibility and solvency is another area. I know there's a 3% minimum reserve, but 5% or greater is really what we'd want to have in case the federal government didn't help us out during COVID. I'd like to have an interim or a formative evaluation somewhere in the process where I would get feedback as to whether I'm on the right path, not on the right path. Today, I sent a lot of my direct reports an email, a reminder that next week we're going to do interim evals. They're not binding. It's just an opportunity for us to have a conversation if we're on track with the goals we set collaboratively at the beginning of the year. And then clearly there needs to be a final eval. I'm fine with that information being public. I think it's one of the things that you have to do as a superintendent is model for your administrators, your teachers, your classified staff, your bus drivers, what a good assessment process would look like. I hope that it could be a balance of both quantitative, which I kind of mentioned before with student achievement to grad rate, but also some qualitative assessment as to how people feel about certain things. How they feel about their school, how they feel about their local district, how they feel about their superintendent, his visibility, his openness. Because I found as a leader in Orange here and as a principal, those types of questions, I was an A-rated school with 99% AYP completed. I moved to high school from C to an A. But how did people feel about me at the end of the day? That's important to me. So I'd like to have some qualitative data in it as well.
Thank you.
Dr. Bernier, would you please describe your beliefs about student discipline and safety?
That's a big topic. Student safety is, I'll start with safety. Safety is paramount to me. When young people come to school, they should be coming to a safe environment where a culture has been built where at least, and this is a very low standard, but at least they know at least one adult in that school building is their go-to person. It's the person that they know will stop and care about them. And it's not something you can force, but it is something that you can expect. It is something that you can drive as a standard in your interviewing processes when you're looking for individuals to fill classrooms and fill other roles within your school building to ensure that everyone has school safety on the top of their minds. If I was in person, I would go a little differently to some other examples that I have, but I can't see everybody's face, so I'm going to hold back just a little. But if they come with 10 fingers and toes, that's how their parent wants them to come home. And as a building level principal, as a superintendent, as a chief of staff, that is my primary responsibility. I won't go into detail here, but this past spring we had a military jet go down on approach to one of our Air Force bases. That plane crashed within 600 feet of a kindergarten playground. Immediately fired up the EOC, immediately dispatched the superintendent, immediately got on the horn with our board members, and we began the pattern of getting information, feeding it back, got with my comms office, etc. So school safety is everybody's responsibility. And it's not just a locked door. It's not just a secure piece of glass. It's about internal in the building as well, that young people understand that in the community, on the bus, in the school building, walking home, we all have responsibilities for each other's safety. Drugs, alcohol, weapons, we don't know why they're coming. We don't know who the victim is. It may not be you, but it may be me. If it's me, I'm going to see something and say something. If it's you, I need you to do the same, because it's only together that we can build an environment of true safety amongst our children. And knock on wood, I've been blessed. I also know that I've planned for the eventuality should one of the most tragic things that could ever happen in a school building occur. I hope I never need the plan, but I know that it's vital to be prepared and to ensure that we're moving forward. I guess I have some of the same beliefs about student discipline. I think discipline sometimes has a misnomer. I think sometimes people equate discipline with punishment. Discipline really is the way you behave when people aren't watching. And as a middle school educator and a high school principal, and as a associate superintendent, and when I have the opportunity to interact with principals now as the chief of staff, it's something we talk about. How do we instill in our kids that sense of self-discipline, that way to behave, so that when school situations transpire, when other things occur, that they have an opportunity to understand as best they can what's happening and make proper decisions even after the fact. I always, always, always valued honesty in my office, even when the most egregious thing had occurred. Because if there was a way to reward that honesty, I thought it was vitally important, not to forego rules, but to find a way in the code of conduct to let the student know that whatever was transpiring may have been slightly less based upon what had transpired, based upon their willingness to admit it. Because people make mistakes, and as adults, we make mistakes. And the worst thing you can do is try to hide it and lie behind it. It will get you in trouble every single time. One of the things I tried to do in that aspect, and I'll be briefer here, is PBIS. I believe positive behavioral intervention support. Our code of conducts are huge. They're a big, long list of everything that'll get you in trouble. You can usually come up with really 5 or 6 words: responsible, truthful, caring, respectful, to conduct yourself, and you never have to worry about the code of conduct. And really, that's what we ought to be driving in student discipline. Making them self-disciplined, helping them understand when situations do happen, because everybody makes a mistake. Honesty will help pay off, and give them a roadmap to navigate both their school situation, home situation, bus, whatever the situation is related to school or home. Give them a way to move forward with a set of very clear expectations that if you conduct yourself in this manner, you probably will never have to worry about who your principal is or who your dean of students is.
Thank you. Ms. Fisher?
Yes, thank you. Okay. Given the changing dynamics of public education, what do you see as the critical issues in the next 5 years?
Nationally, with all schools, Lee County specifically, both.
Both.
Let's start larger and wider. I think that all school districts are going to have to figure out what the new normal is upon full return. And that new normal is going to be different. I think we're going to have to deal with situations where virtual schooling is going to become an additional method. I had the luxury of being the Orange County virtual principal and training Brandy Gurley, who is still the principal of the Orange County Virtual School, and building a very strong virtual program. But virtual education is not for everyone. We learned that during the pandemic. But I think virtual schooling is going to continue to grow. With that, I think, and it will have to be done with the state legislature and other individuals, but I think you're going to see a shift between mastery learning and seat time. I think there is the possibility of the future holding an opportunity where if a student can demonstrate mastery of a content, they can move on, that they don't have to sit in a Carnegie unit in order to wait for a final grade based upon the number of hours they spent in a seat. And with that comes some of the things that I did in Orange. We were working on flexible hours in order to get young people who didn't fit the 7 to 3 o'clock high school standard traditional environment. We gave them opportunities to go to work. We gave them opportunities to go to school at different times. I don't have all the answers to this, but I can envision a time where our high school campuses look somewhat like a collegiate campus, where they're open at certain hours and there's night classes as well. And young people don't come and go, but they're built into a process which gives them the opportunity to maybe make money, to make and help support family members who may have been injured, or a mother who has to work and there's a younger sibling that needs someone. We have to remember not everybody grew up in a household. I remember it, honestly, being the youngest with a single mom. There was a lot of responsibility on my plate. So those are all some alternative pathways to graduation, and I'll end with, I really think that there's an opportunity for apprenticeship and internship programs that may even be paid. As industry certification grows, as alternative pathways to college and career ready happen, there's going to be an influx of college into our system, which we're already seeing with dual enrollment. We're going to see industry come in with opportunities for our young people, and we may even see some of the kids headed potentially into a marketing or other career have that opportunity to have an internship or even a paid internship in a corporate environment. I think it's really exciting what could happen. But I think I go back to the first step is we have to begin to get our hands around what it's going to look like, knock on wood, when someday this all goes away, or it becomes a level of infection within our community like the flu, and it's tolerable, and we've learned to live with it.
Excellent answer. Thank you very much. Ms. Giovanelli.
This is actually number 9, ladies. What experience have you had in working with a community of diverse elements such as socioeconomic, educational levels, culture, race, and ethnicity? Please explain in detail. Thank you.
I'll give you 2 quick examples. I already gave you the ESSER 3 situation with multiple communities, so everyone from the NAACP to Opportunity 180 to the Public Ed Foundation to all those individuals and their organizations who have the better mousetrap for us. Finding a process to truly engage with them was incredibly important. The other one I was going to share with you just left my mind because I wanted to jump on what I had already said so I could organize my thoughts. I'm embarrassed. Can you repeat the question for me, please?
What experience have you had in working in a community of diverse elements such as socioeconomic and educational levels, culture, race, ethnicity? Please explain.
One of the other examples I wanted to share with you is working with the AACCC, the African American Council of Christian Clergy. Until you work with them, you have no idea how to say it. Pastor Zach, Pastor Mills, really working with them in creating something around 3 pillars: law, education, and faith. We worked with FAMU, the new law school that opened in the city of Orlando, and we built a Spreading the Dream Martin Luther King celebration at the Dr. Phillips Performing Arts Center for middle school students. It was an avenue that when Dr. Jenkins called me to the conference room to participate in the meeting, clearly I was a little uncomfortable at the beginning. I didn't really know the leaders in the room, but I thank God for Dr. Jenkins every day. She gave me the opportunity to grow and to build relationships. And I can't tell you how many other times working in alternative ed or working with an alternative to expulsion center that I use those pastors, that I use their youth organizations to make the difference in the lives of children who had made bigger mistakes than most make, but needed the opportunity to know that they could be forgiven and come back to a school, or be forgiven and come back into their community. And those pastors became an amazing resource to me. I worked very, very hard with local community groups in creating a accelerated middle school program, trying to get children of disproportionality through middle school who had been retained because of the 3rd grade retention in the state of Florida, and then maybe some overzealous elementary principals who are arriving into middle school with very, very little hope of graduating before 16. The 16-year-old going into the 9th grade, likelihood of graduating is almost 0%. So that working again with those same individuals, built a way for us to build a accelerated middle school program that allowed young people to complete a year of middle school in a semester. The final semester, if you can track me, 6th grade, 7th grade was 1 year, 8th grade was the 2nd year, and then we scheduled them into high school courses with no dangling credits. We would start with the virtual school with mathematics and language arts, but if they completed, we then could move into a science class. So that when they arrived into 9th grade, depending on what they chose, traditional high school or alternative, they would have already some credits towards graduation. And I will say most chose the opportunity to go on to alternative settings or even a charter school, because in some cases, going back to the traditional high school put them in a situation with the same peer group. So again, currently I'm with the West Las Vegas Neighborhood Promise Group. I won't get into the history of Las Vegas, but I will tell you that when Sammy Davis Jr. performed on the Strip, he was not welcome in any of the hotels. He had to go to the historic West Side, and that's where he stayed. That community is one that I was honored to be selected by them to sit with them as we plan the future for those children, ESSER funding, community events, and driving a different trajectory amongst those student populations.
Thank you.
Okay, so, thank you, Dr. Bernier. We are finishing up now, and we are going to give you an opportunity to, if you have questions for the board, and then for a closing statement, and I'm going to turn it back over to Ms. Fisher, who will end the meeting. Ms. Fisher?
Okay, so
So all of you asked me a ton of questions, and I thank you very much. They were very comprehensive. I really appreciate the opportunity for the stretch. No matter how this turns out, I know that I will be a better person for remembering everything that I've accomplished in what I think is a short period of time, but the mirror tells me something else.
One second.
This to
Hold on
whomever
one second.
you want.
I'm sorry.
What would be one of the foundational beliefs that someone on the board has for what would make the next superintendent successful in Lee County, with the community, with the board, and with the staff?
Ms. Fisher, can you have him repeat that, because I don't think he
Yes,
recognized the noise.
we had a little bit of interference. Could you repeat that, please?
We had some interference on our side, so could you repeat what you had stated, please?
I don't think you could hear hear.
I'm sorry, you didn't hear the question?
No,
No.
it was, you had just made a statement, and if you could repeat that, because while you were speaking, there was some noise going on our side, and we were not able to hear you clearly.
Oh, hopefully you heard the part where I thank you for all your time and all the effort and all the work. What do you believe is a foundational belief that the superintendent will need to have in order to be successful, both with the internal, including yourselves, teachers, principals, and the external stakeholders?
Well, I'll answer first, or let me
go ahead,
see
Ms.
if
Fisher.
anybody else has any. Ms. Gittens has a comment.
Very simply, communication, 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 as you stated earlier.
And then anyone else have anything to add to that? Okay.
I do.
Yes.
I would say an ability to manage your management team, meaning the board. I say that with a smile behind my mask.
I know I ran long, so I'll only ask one other question. And hopefully I'll have an opportunity within Lee County to ask you some more, either privately or publicly in another interview. If you had the chance to privately pull a superintendent candidate aside and say, this is the one thing you need, now that I know, other than communication, to be successful in Lee County, what would that be?
Ms. Vaughn?
Integrity.
And I think that one of the comments you made when you did your opening statement was that you're a hands-on servant leader, and in my estimation, that would be important also.
Thank you for that.
Ms. Gittens?
And just one more I would have is in inclusivity or inclusion in decision-making, inclusion in decisions and decision-making.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. I got the inclusion and making sure that in a sense that the right stakeholders are at the table and people have an opportunity to provide their input.
So you will, she put a thumbs up. So you will be hearing from us, and hopefully we will get to meet in person. And at this point, if you have no other questions for us, I think we are ready to let you go. And
Closing statement.
Closing statement.
Yeah, did you have a closing statement to make?
I just want you to know as a board, it's been a pleasure to watch your meetings and watch you go through the process of selecting candidates. You are amazingly honest with each other, and it was refreshing to see. I do want you to know that every candidate should be aware of the elected superintendency issue. It didn't come up as a question, but I was aware, and I did apply knowing that. And if you don't mind, I would hope that I could prove over what could be a very short tenure, depending on what the elected do in the state of Florida and the community does. I hope that we could prove together that the selection of a great superintendent and one who will work with the board and the community could potentially put that issue to rest for all of us. If not, I've never considered public office. I would have to talk to somebody who's got more guts than I do to have run for a political position. But my goal would be to work with all of you so that the community would like the tax referendum that they passed so overwhelmingly for you, that they would look at that item on the ballot and just think, we just don't need that anymore. So that's my commitment to all of you, and I look forward to hearing from you and the search consultants in the days ahead. Good luck with the rest of your candidates. And again, if there's anything that Clark County School District can do for you or for any children that have been impacted by the event, please do not hesitate to have someone reach out to me.
thank you very much. We appreciate that. Okay, then,
Thank you for the additional time.
Thank you.
it's our pleasure. Thank you. Okay, so then,
Should I log out now?
Yes, yeah, you're good.
you can log out now.
Thank you.
Please. It was
Yes.
a pleasure.
Thank you. The pleasure was ours.
Yeah.
Okay. So, yes.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Ms. Patrica?
I sent a question to Dr. Savage, and I believe it's a question I've run by the board attorney before, whether ESSER 3 funds can be used to upgrade technology in the boardroom. I'm being serious. The amount of man-hours that were spent
Yes.
were wasted if we had just spent the money on technology. So I want you all to know that I sent that question to the superintendent. I would expect the answer to come back in a board update. And as frustrating as it was in the beginning, I know you guys did everything humanly possible to make this work, and you really did do a good job. It's tough to make 1980s technology work in 2022. So thank you. You stretched the technology to its limits, and I do genuinely appreciate what you did.
Thank
Those
you.
are my comments.
And
Thank you.
thank you for that, Mrs. Patrica. Mrs. Gittens?
When I spoke with Ray and Associates on Friday, I told them that I had sent in the question that is it Dr. Bernier or Mr. Bernier that just finished, asked. And I have said this, and you have all heard it ad nauseum for the last several months, that I believe that question is something that should be addressed to all candidates. I feel it's very, very important to know that they know and they are prepared to do a position that may be, a year and a half, 2 years, or it may be longer. So it is, to me, extremely important. And obviously, he felt as a candidate that it was important enough to let us know that he was aware of that. I think that we should, and I know we can do it in our one-on-ones, but I think it's important to the public to know as well, because that is one of the questions that is being asked, is do the candidates know that this could potentially be this long instead of this long?
Exactly. Thank you.
I think that he stated that because he has been watching our meetings and he knows that's a question that has come up, as well as he stated that he was aware of it, and so have the other ones been notified of the possibility of that taking place. I just wanted to put that out there. And then I also wanted to say to the communication staff, thank you so much, because I know they have been working for days on that, so thank you for that. And they are going to hopefully put that on their wish list coming up to upgrade.
Right, and I'm just going to say, we have not done public comment yet, so let's do that and save our comments for the...
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
And so is there anyone in the audience who wishes to comment?
Like, where's she going? But I realized. Yeah.
Good evening, ladies.
Good evening.
Christine DiVigili. So,
Rest of it off, is everything else on?
I second Patrica's motion for an upgrade.
I think it's her
It's the phone going up to the microphone.
Well, I use my phone up here all the time. It can't be done.
Right, and it doesn't do it.
Right.
Have they turned off
They have to turn
everything?
something off in the back.
Yeah, I think they're going to turn the volume down.
My hand, but- There we go. You got better enough. Maybe down on my mark.
How long is your arm? Just saying.
Really long.
Practice a selfie, right?
All right. We good?
Yes.
I mean, I can talk loud. I got a big mouth. Okay, so this job of the superintendent, I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and I think the job of the superintendent is probably one of the most important jobs we have in all of Lee County. This person should adequately represent the qualities that Lee County residents ultimately want to see trickle down to their children. Because the hiring of this person, that's exactly what's going to happen. That's exactly what parents should expect when we hire a new superintendent, for that person's qualities and traits to eventually trickle down to our children. So I guess we're here once again in a position where we're gonna have to wait and see the answer to the following question, which would be, do we want more of the same in Lee County, or do we want something better for our children? If we're looking for more of the same, then we will look for someone like Dr. Bernier, because he's an exact replica of Savage. I mean, like, he speaks like him, he uses the same strategies as him. Heck, he even made a comment that I am pretty sure Savage said to you guys less than a year ago in his interview about the two ears and one mouth thing. I'm gonna find it, and I'm gonna quote it for y'all. But it was like exact words. It was around the halfway mark. Is that a coincidence? No, not ever, especially here in Lee County. If we're looking for something different, we would look for someone like Dr., and I don't even know how to say his name, Mahlerwein, because he didn't have to tell you how much integrity he has. That showed through in his interview. This is a man who came from nothing, got a doctorate, chose to go beyond that doctorate to take leadership courses and understand what it means to be a true leader. We've had so many conversations in the last couple of months here about retaining our teachers and retaining our staff, and all this stuff is about professional development, leadership development, professional development. That's what this guy does. And not for nothing, but we do extensive backgrounds, and when I say we, I mean the group, me and my 5 best friends. We do extensive backgrounds on all of these candidates. He's the only one we couldn't find any dirt on. Take that one. But other than that, you guys did a great job today. This was very productive.
Thank you, Ms. DiVigili. Okay. Mrs. Gittens?
Yes, if I may respond, Ms. Jordan mentioned that all of the candidates know about the situation. If they're watching, yes, I just want to make sure, and I don't understand why it couldn't have been a question, what they felt about that. And I was told by Ray and Associates that all the questions were done. I'm sorry, I think it's just extremely important, and we don't need to just gloss over that. And why can't we ask the question?
Ms. Patrica?
So I've talked over and over again about the importance of interest-based bargaining, and as we bring in a new superintendent, should we have a policy in place that institutionalizes interest-based bargaining? And I proposed that question to Ray and Associates, and it was not included on the list. I'm going to go back to, when I saw that it wasn't on the list, I was a little bit disappointed, and then I thought, okay, we've hired these professionals to do a job for a reason, and that was why I didn't bring it up as an issue, because we've hired them to do a job, and so I'm going to trust their guidance through this process with the understanding, again, that they have a vested interest in making sure that we find the right fit for Lee County, because if we don't, they have to do it again for free. So I'm, again, going to just sit back and turn over the reins to them with regard to the processes and the details thereof, so that we can make the best decision based on their expertise and their expert guidance. I just wanted to let you know that I share your frustration about the lack of the question being included, because I experienced it too.
Well, and I understand that, and this isn't just, I see what you're saying, and I'm not upset just because my question didn't get in. The point is, this situation gives us a potential of, in 4 years, having 4 different superintendents. If for some reason they don't really understand the severity of it and decide, yes, they'll take it, and then realize and get here and think, no, I don't want to do this, and we have disrupted the students in this county 4 times. And I'm just asking for transparency with it. And I just want to make sure that they do know. So I definitely will ask it when I am in my one-on-ones, but I think everyone should know if it's a big deal.
Mrs. Giovanelli?
I too sent that in as a question, but I sent, I think, like 15 questions, and I'm not sure, some of them probably were similar. They're going to reword it, and, so I think we wait till the 3 finalists, and we'll figure out as a board if that's one of our questions. Obviously, he was aware of it, so I would hope that the other 4 applicants would also be aware of it. And I think once we narrow down that to the 3, I think we can make that determination. So I'm sure there, and there's more questions, including yours, that probably might be in round, 2. So that's, that, I just wanted to say that. But I agree with you, Ms. Gittens. It is very important for the applicants to be well aware of that. And so if they're not, then we'll have to deal with that at some point.
And I agree with Ms. Giovanelli.
Uh-oh.
Let's get pizza and ice cream if we agree like 12 more
I was
times.
thinking more like Taco Tuesday, but okay.
I said tacos and pizza, but
Okay.
So then, I don't know what is stopping us from putting in a request or adding that question to the list.
well, we
You
can't do it now because
you have to have the same questions.
Right.
Yeah, we've had 2 candidates without it.
And Ms. Gittens, this is not being publicized for the other 3 candidates. They do not know the questions that, they're not able to watch this or anything until after the fact. So then it is open to the community. So that, you said this something earlier that if they were watching, but they're not, no one's watching.
No, and I understand that, and which is why if it was brought up, anyway, I'm going to leave it alone, but if it was brought up in this session, why can't it be brought up in the others? But I'll leave it alone.
Well,
I'll leave it alone.
all the interviews will be posted tomorrow night after
fine.
the next 3, so then at that time, his comments will be heard by anyone who watches it. But, I'm going to question why we can't make sure that each one of the candidates, the semifinalists, has that information. Is there a reason why?
Well, we just can't ask anybody a question that wasn't already asked.
Right after tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
We-
I think, hasn't Ray and Associates already assured us that they know?
No, Ray
that
and
it was a
Associates
conversation?
assured us, no.
Gwen,
They assured,
Gwen,
may I
was-
finish?
I was speaking and you interrupted me.
I'm so sorry.
I do remember them saying that it was part of the process that in conversations, all right, well, my memory is wrong. Yes, Madam Chair, we can
may
ensure that they know.
May I please respond to that? On the several occasions that I have brought it up, their response has been, these people know what's going on, they're professionals, and they know, and they know. And the last time it was, and when we get to the end, we will mention it.
Okay. Ms. Vaughn?
Well, I beg to differ. What else is new, right? I think the most important questions were most of the questions that we asked today, because it really behooves us to know the character and values and experience. And to me, the fact that both of the candidates today had done their homework. I don't know if they knew that one particular thing, but it's always, well, it's not even impressive. It's kind of something that should be done. I know just going into interview as a teacher, and I'm sure all of you have had interview experiences, you don't go into professional jobs without doing your research. And so, yeah, it's not, I'm not even going to say I was impressed. It was par for the course. It was something that I would expect for somebody at that level. And if they don't know about this, well, they'll find out. And the other thing is, hopefully, well, hopefully it'll be defeated. But if it's not defeated, I'm guessing that a successful superintendent would have a relatively easy time getting elected. And it's more motivation than somebody who sits in the legislature and has never even been in a classroom having aspirations of coming in to be a superintendent. Ha ha. That's the end of what I'm going to say.
Thank you. Any other comments, board members? Ms.
Real quick,
Giovanelli.
and I agree with Ms. Vaughn. I mean, actually, that question, we'd be here all night. We had a lot of questions. So we had to, it had to be pointed, we had to focus on, and that's irrelevant for us to learn anything, because that's telling him about us. So that question really was irrelevant at this stage in the process. And so I agree with Ms. Vaughn. And actually, one thing that Ray and Associates had said was they need to do their own research in the state and see what's going on. And actually, I kind of agree with that at this point, because they need to know their audience, right? And that's, because that's the kind of person we want. We want someone to know their audience, so,
I agree again.
thanks.
Okay,
Getting closer.
all right. Then Attorney Dupree Bruno, do you have any comments?
I have no comments. Just continue on.
Okay, so yes, Ms.
Something a
Vaughn?
little bit slightly different. Shall we expect any other surprises tomorrow in terms of times? And what is the latest update on exactly what time the candidates are going to be interviewed?
So then, tomorrow,
This will be good for the public as well, since we had a big change today.
tomorrow, Charlie Jeff Perry will be interviewed at 8:40 a.m. Michael Gall will be interviewed at 10:20 a.m. And Michael Ramirez will be interviewed at 12:15 p.m.
That's it, right?
And
Yes.
that's it.
So no changes.
No,
But what time are we supposed to be done?
it's the 3.
1:30.
Wow. Why was I thinking we'd be here all day?
Because it's on the calendar. It was held until like 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock, something like that.
Okay.
So what is the time tomorrow?
So then, seeing no other business, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.